Lena Hart's hand trembled as she reached for the champagne flute, her ex-fiancé's laughter cutting through the ballroom like a knife. 3 months. It had been 3 months since Marcus destroyed everything, and here he was, draped over some 23-year-old in a dress that cost more than Lena's rent. Her vision blurred. She couldn't breathe. She couldn't let them see her fall apart. Not here, not in front of Chicago's elite. So she did the only thing her panicked brain could conjure. She grabbed the nearest stranger's arm and prayed he wouldn't shove her away. If you want to see how this desperate moment changes everything, stay until the end. Hit that like button and comment which city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. The grand ballroom of the Montgomery Hotel smelled like money. Old money. The kind that came with marble floors and crystal chandeliers that probably cost more than Lena's entire design business was worth. She shouldn't have come. The invitation had arrived 2 weeks ago, printed on cardstock so thick it could double as armor, and her business partner Jess had practically shoved her out the door. "You need to network," Jess had said, applying lipstick in Lena's bathroom mirror like she owned the place. "Your designs are incredible, but incredible doesn't pay the bills when nobody knows your name." Lena had wanted to argue. She'd wanted to say that attending a charity gala full of people who wouldn't look twice at a struggling designer from the South Side was a waste of time. But Jess was right. The Hawthorne Building Restoration Project was supposed to be announced tonight. The biggest historic preservation contract Chicago had seen in a decade. If Lena could just get in front of the right people, maybe pitch her portfolio to someone who mattered. That hope died the moment she saw Marcus. He stood near the bar, one hand casually resting on the small of his date's back, the same way he used to touch Lena. The girl couldn't have been older than 25, with that effortless beauty that came from never having worried about money or betrayal, or whether the electricity would stay on through winter. Her dress was designer, probably Valentino. Her laugh was bright and careless. Lena felt sick. "Lena!" Marcus's voice carried across the space between them, loud enough that several nearby guests turned to look. "Lena Hart! Wow, I didn't know you could afford tickets to events like this." The champagne glass in Lena's hand suddenly weighed 1,000 pounds. She forced a smile, the kind she'd perfected during the last terrible months of their relationship, when she'd pretended everything was fine, even as he drained their joint account and spent nights working late with the intern who was now clinging to his arm. "Marcus." Her voice came out steadier than she felt. "I'm here on business." "Business?" He laughed, and the sound made her chest tighten. "You mean that little design thing you've been doing? That's cute." "Really? Good for you for keeping busy." The girl beside him giggled, actually giggled. Lena's fingers went numb. The room tilted slightly, and she became acutely aware of every eye on her. The way women in their designer gowns were cataloging her department store dress, the way men in their $1,000 suits were already dismissing her as irrelevant. She'd come here to rebuild, to prove she was more than the girl Marcus had left with nothing but debt and a broken lease. Instead, she was drowning. She turned blindly, desperate for escape, for air, for anything that would get her away from Marcus's smug face and that girl's perfectly manicured hand on his chest. Her hip collided with something solid, someone solid, and champagne sloshed over the rim of her glass. "I'm so sorry, The words died in her throat. The man she'd stumbled into was tall, easily over 6 feet, with dark hair that looked professionally tousled and a jaw that belonged in a cologne ad. His suit was impeccable, midnight blue, tailored so perfectly it had to be custom. But it was his eyes that stopped her. Gray, like a winter storm, and completely unreadable. "Are you all right?" His voice was low, quiet enough that only she could hear it. Behind her, Marcus laughed again. "God, Lena, are you drunk already? The gala just started." Something in Lena's brain short-circuited. Maybe it was panic. Maybe it was desperation. Maybe it was the 3 months of humiliation and sleepless nights finally catching up to her. Whatever it was, it made her do something completely insane. She grabbed the stranger's arm. "There you are," she said, too loud, too bright. "I've been looking everywhere for you." The man went very still. His eyes dropped to where her fingers clutched his sleeve, then slowly traveled back to her face. For a horrible second, Lena thought he might pull away. Might ask who the hell she was and why she was touching him. She could already imagine Marcus's reaction, the fresh round of humiliation that would follow. But the stranger didn't pull away. Instead, Something shifted in his expression, barely perceptible, like a door opening just a crack. His hand came up to cover hers, and when he spoke, his voice carried the easy confidence of someone who'd never questioned his place in a room like this. "Sorry I'm late," he said smoothly. The meeting ran longer than expected. Lena's heart hammered so hard she was sure everyone could hear it. The stranger's hand was warm over hers, his grip firm but not aggressive. He was playing along. Why was he playing along? Marcus's smile faltered. "I didn't realize you were seeing someone. There's a lot you don't know about my life anymore." The words came out sharper than Lena intended, but she didn't take them back. The stranger's thumb brushed against her knuckles, a small gesture, almost comforting. "Should we find our table?" he asked, looking down at Lena with an expression that was almost convincing, almost like he actually cared whether she was okay. "Yes," Lena breathed. "Please." They moved through the crowd together, and Lena felt the weight of 100 curious stares following them. The stranger didn't seem to notice, or if he did, he didn't care. He guided her toward a quieter corner of the ballroom, near a marble pillar wrapped in tiny white lights. Once they were out of Marcus's line of sight, Lena expected him to drop her hand and walk away. Instead, he turned to face her, his expression unreadable. "Thank you," Lena said quickly. "I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to drag you into whatever that was. He's my ex, and seeing him here with her, I couldn't." She was rambling. She knew she was rambling. "I'll leave you alone now. Thank you again." "You're shaking." Lena looked down. He was right. Her hands were trembling so badly she had to set down her champagne glass on a nearby table before she dropped it. "I'm fine," she lied. "You don't look fine." There was no judgment in his voice, just a statement of fact. Lena let out a shaky laugh that sounded a little too close to a sob. "Yeah, well, running into your ex-fiancé 3 months after he emptied your bank account and moved in with someone half your age will do that to you." She pressed her fingers against her temples. "I shouldn't have said that. I don't know why I said that. You're a complete stranger." "Adrian Cole." Lena blinked. "What?" "My name. Adrian Cole." He extended his hand formally, and despite everything, Lena almost smiled at the absurdity of it. They just pretended to be a couple in front of her ex, and now he was introducing himself like they'd met at a networking mixer. "Lena Hart." She shook his hand. His grip was firm, professional. "The ex-fiancé," Adrian said. "Is he still watching?" Lena risked a glance over her shoulder. Marcus was absolutely watching, his expression caught somewhere between confusion and irritation. The girl beside him looked bored. "Yes," Lena muttered. "Then we should probably keep up appearances for a few more minutes, unless you'd rather not." Lena studied him. Adrian Cole. The name sounded vaguely familiar, but she couldn't place it. He didn't look like the kind of man who did favors for strangers, yet here he was, offering to continue the charade that was saving her from complete mortification. "Why are you helping me?" she asked. Something flickered across Adrian's face, too quick to identify. "Let's just say I understand what it's like to want to avoid certain conversations at events like this." Before Lena could ask what he meant, a server approached with a tray of champagne. Adrian took 2 glasses and handed one to Lena, his movements smooth and practiced. "So," he said, his tone shifting to something lighter, almost conversational. "What kind of business brings you to the Montgomery Gala?" It took Lena a second to remember she'd told Marcus she was here on business. "I'm an interior designer, historic restoration, mostly. I heard the Hawthorne Building project might be announced tonight, so I thought..." She trailed off, feeling suddenly foolish. "I thought I might be able to make some connections." "The Hawthorne Building." Adrian's expression didn't change, but something in his voice sharpened slightly. "That's an ambitious project." "It's incredible," Lena said, and despite the chaos of the last 10 minutes, she felt a familiar spark of excitement. "Do you know it?" "The original architecture is from 1889. Most firms want to gut it and turn it into generic office space, but if someone restored it properly, kept the original crown molding, the terrazzo floors, the wrought iron balconies, it could be a landmark." She stopped abruptly, realizing she was rambling again. But when she looked up, Adrian was watching her with an intensity that made her breath catch. "You sound passionate about it," he said. "I am." Lena clutched her champagne glass. "I know I'm nobody. I know my firm is small, and we've only done a handful of residential projects. But I understand buildings like the Hawthorne. I understand what they meant to the people who built them, what they could mean again if someone just... She shook her head. Sorry, you probably don't care about any of this. I didn't say that. The way he looked at her made Lena's skin warm. It wasn't the way Marcus used to look at her, calculating, assessing what she could do for him. It was different, present, like Adrian was actually listening. You never told me what brings you here, Lena said, deflecting. Business or pleasure? Obligation. The word came out dry. I sponsor these events. It's expected. Sponsor? Lena felt her stomach drop. Wait, what do you do? Real estate development. Oh no. What kind of real estate development? For the first time, something that might have been amusement touched Adrian's expression. The expensive kind. Lena's mind raced. Real estate development. Sponsoring charity galas. That suit that probably cost more than her car. Adrian Cole. Adrian? Oh my God. The realization hit her like a freight train. You're Adrian Cole, Cole Industries. You're the Adrian Cole. She'd seen his name in the Tribune, in Architectural Digest. Cole Industries owned half of Chicago's skyline, including the 3 new high-rises in River North and the luxury hotel conversion in the Loop. He was a billionaire, an actual billionaire, and she just grabbed his arm and forced him to pretend to be her boyfriend. I'm going to die, Lena said faintly. I grabbed a billionaire. I'm going to die of embarrassment, and they're going to find my body right here next to this very expensive marble pillar. You're not going to die. You don't know that. People die of embarrassment all the time. No, they don't. Yes, they do. I'm living proof. Well, dying proof. Adrian's mouth twitched. It wasn't quite a smile, but it was close. You're not what I expected. What did you expect? I don't know. He tilted his head slightly, studying her. Someone more calculated, maybe. Most people who approach me at these events want something. I didn't approach you, Lena pointed out. I crashed into you. There's a difference. Is there? Yes. One is strategic, the other is just tragic. This time, Adrian did smile. Small, but genuine. It transformed his entire face, softening the hard lines around his mouth and making him look younger, more approachable. Lena! A woman's voice cut through the moment. Lena turned to find Jess weaving through the crowd, her expression caught between excitement and panic. There you are. I've been looking everywhere. Oh! She stopped short, eyes widening as she took in Adrian. Hi. Hello. I'm Jessica Chen, Lena's business partner. Adrian Cole. He shook her hand and Jess looked like she might faint. The Adrian Cole, Jess said weakly, from Cole Industries. That's the one. Jess's eyes darted between them, clearly trying to piece together how Lena had ended up talking to one of Chicago's most powerful developers. I'm sorry to interrupt, but Lena, the Hawthorne announcement is about to happen. We should... Go, Adrian said, looking at Lena. Don't miss it on my account. Lena hesitated. Leaving felt wrong somehow, like she was walking away from something important. But Jess was right. This was why she'd come. The Hawthorne building was her shot at legitimacy, at proving she was more than Marcus's discarded ex-girlfriend. Thank you again, Lena said, for everything. I'm sorry I ambushed you. You didn't ambush me. Adrian's gray eyes held hers for a beat too long. Good luck with the announcement. Jess practically dragged Lena toward the center of the ballroom where a small stage had been set up. What the hell just happened? She hissed. Were you talking to Adrian Cole? How do you know Adrian Cole? I don't, Lena whispered back. I grabbed him to avoid Marcus and he just went with it. He went with it? I don't understand it either. The lights dimmed and a distinguished man in his 60s stepped up to the microphone. Lena recognized him from the gala program, Richard Montgomery, chairman of the Historic Chicago Foundation. Good evening, everyone, Montgomery began. Thank you all for being here tonight. As you know, the foundation has been working tirelessly to preserve our city's architectural heritage. Lena tried to focus on the speech, but her mind kept drifting back to Adrian, the way he'd covered her hand with his, the way he'd looked at her when she talked about the Hawthorne building, like her words actually mattered. And, after careful consideration, Montgomery continued, We're thrilled to announce that the Hawthorne building restoration will be led by Cole Industries, with Adrian Cole personally overseeing the project. The ballroom erupted in polite applause. Lena's heart sank. Of course. Of course Adrian's company got the project. A firm like hers never stood a chance against Cole Industries. Adrian stepped onto the stage and the applause grew louder. Under the spotlight, he looked even more untouchable. Powerful, wealthy, completely out of her league. This was who he really was. Not the quiet man who'd played along with her desperate charade, but a billionaire developer who moved in circles Lena could barely imagine. "Thank you, Richard," Adrian said, his voice carrying easily across the room. "Cole Industries is honored to take on this project. The Hawthorne building represents everything we value about Chicago's architectural legacy: craftsmanship, vision, and attention to detail that modern construction often overlooks." Lena felt Jess elbow her. "He sounds like you," she whispered. Adrian continued, "This restoration will require a team that understands the building's historical significance while bringing fresh perspective to its future. We'll be seeking input from local preservation experts and designers who share our commitment to authenticity." Local designers. The word should have given Lena hope, but she knew how these things worked. Local designers meant established firms with impressive portfolios and connections, not a struggling two-person operation run out of a converted warehouse space. The speech ended, and Adrian left the stage to another round of applause. Lena watched him disappear into a crowd of admirers and business associates, people who belonged in his world. She felt Jess's hand on her arm. "Come on," Jess said gently. "Let's get out of here." They were halfway to the exit when Lena's phone buzzed. She pulled it out, expecting a notification from her bank about insufficient funds or maybe a spam email. Instead, she saw a message from an unknown number. "Your perspective on the Hawthorne building was interesting. Would you be willing to discuss it further?" Lena stopped walking. "Jess?" "What?" "I think Adrian Cole just texted me." Jess snatched the phone. "Holy shit! How does he even have your number?" Lena had no idea. Then she remembered the gala registration. All attendees had to provide contact information when they bought tickets. He must have accessed the guest list. "What do I say?" Lena asked. "You say yes, obviously. Lena, this could be huge." Lena's thumb hovered over the keyboard. This was insane. Men like Adrian Cole didn't text women like her. They didn't play along with fake relationship charades or ask about their perspectives on historic buildings. There had to be a catch. But then she thought about the Hawthorne building, the project that could change everything for her struggling firm. And she thought about the way Adrian had looked at her when she talked about preservation, like he actually understood. She typed quickly before she could overthink it. "I'd be happy to discuss it. When and where?" The response came within seconds. "My office. Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. I'll send the address." "Tomorrow morning?" Jess's eyes were huge. "Lena, this is happening." "This is terrifying," Lena corrected. "Same thing." They made it outside before Lena saw Marcus again. He was standing near the valet station with his date, and the look on his face when he spotted Lena was pure irritation. "Leaving so soon?" he called out. "I thought you were here on business." Lena felt the familiar urge to shrink, to make herself smaller, to apologize for existing in his space. But then her phone buzzed again with the address to Cole Industries headquarters, and something shifted in her chest. "I am here on business," she said, meeting Marcus's eyes. "And unlike some people, I actually have work to do." She didn't wait for his response. She just linked her arm through Jess's and walked away, her heart pounding, but her head held high. In the Uber ride home, Jess kept looking at her like she'd grown a second head. "I can't believe you grabbed Adrian Cole. I can't believe he went along with it. I can't believe you have a meeting with him tomorrow. I can't believe I'm not throwing up right now." Jess laughed. "You're going to need something better than that dress from Macy's clearance rack." "Hey, this dress is perfectly professional. For a PTA meeting, maybe. Not for Cole Industries." They spent the rest of the ride debating Lena's wardrobe options, but Lena's mind was elsewhere. She kept replaying the moment Adrian had covered her hand with his, the way his voice had dropped when he asked if she was all right. He'd had no reason to help her, no reason to text her, no reason to invite her to his office. Unless he was just being kind. or unless he saw something in her pitch about the Hawthorne building that actually resonated. Lena wanted desperately to believe it was the latter. But a small, Marcus-shaped voice in her head whispered that billionaires didn't care about struggling designers from the South Side. They cared about profit margins and return on investment and maintaining their empires. Her phone buzzed one more time as she climbed the stairs to her apartment. A fifth-floor walk-up with a radiator that only worked sporadically and a neighbor who practiced drums at 2 a.m. For what it's worth, your ex-fiancé is an idiot. AC Lena stared at the message for a long time before typing back. Thank you for tonight. I owe you one. You don't owe me anything, but I'm looking forward to tomorrow. She saved his number and fell into bed fully clothed, too exhausted and overwhelmed to even change. Sleep didn't come easily. Her mind spun with possibilities and fears, with the memory of Adrian's gray eyes and the weight of his hand over hers. Somewhere in the city, in a penthouse she couldn't even imagine, Adrian Cole was probably already asleep, unbothered by the strange encounter with a random woman at a charity gala. But Lena was wrong. 20 floors above Michigan Avenue, Adrian stood at his floor-to-ceiling windows looking out at the Chicago skyline. His daughter was asleep down the hall, his housekeeper had gone home for the night, and the penthouse was silent except for the faint hum of the city below. He should be reviewing the Hawthorne contracts. He should be preparing for tomorrow's board meeting. Instead, he was thinking about a woman with scared eyes and passionate ideas who'd grabbed his arm like he was a life raft in a storm. Most people approached him with agendas. They wanted investments, partnerships, introductions to his network. They smiled too wide and laughed too loud and never quite looked him in the eye. Lena hadn't wanted anything from him. She just needed to not be alone for a few minutes while facing down someone who'd hurt her. Adrian understood that more than she could possibly know. His phone sat on the marble counter, Lena's contact information glowing on the screen. He'd pulled it from the gala registration, which was probably crossing a line. But when she'd talked about the Hawthorne building, when her whole face had lit up describing crown molding and terrazzo floors, he'd seen something real. Something that reminded him why he'd gotten into preservation in the first place, before the business became about quarterly earnings and shareholder expectations. He wanted to hear more, or maybe, a quieter voice suggested, he just wanted to see her again. Adrian pushed the thought away. Tomorrow was about business, about finding the right team for the Hawthorne restoration. That was all. But as he finally headed to bed, he couldn't quite shake the memory of how Lena's hand had felt in his, trembling, uncertain, and somehow exactly right. Book it. Lena's alarm went off at 6 a.m., 3 hours earlier than necessary. She'd barely slept, tossing and turning as her brain cycled through every possible outcome of the meeting. By 6:30, she'd tried on 4 different outfits. By 7, she'd settled on a charcoal gray suit that Jess had lent her, slightly too big in the shoulders, but professional enough. By 7:30, she was sitting at her kitchen table with cold coffee, reviewing her hastily assembled portfolio for the 100th time. The Coal Industries building was in the Loop, all glass and steel and modern minimalism. Lena arrived 15 minutes early, which turned into 20 minutes of sitting in her car trying to calm her racing heart. You can do this, she told herself. He invited you. He wants to hear your ideas. The lobby was exactly what she'd expected. Marble floors, contemporary art, a reception desk that probably cost more than her annual salary. The woman behind it looked up with a polished smile. Lena Hart, Lena managed. I have a 9 a.m. with Mr. Cole. The receptionist's smile didn't falter, but something shifted in her expression. Curiosity, maybe, or surprise. Of course, top floor. Someone will meet you at the elevator. The elevator ride lasted an eternity. Lena watched the numbers climb, 20, 30, 40, and tried to remember how to breathe. When the doors finally opened on the penthouse level, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and an efficient demeanor was waiting. Miss Hart? I'm Patricia, Mr. Cole's executive assistant. Right this way. They walked down a hallway with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Lena caught a glimpse of her reflection in the glass and immediately wished she hadn't. She looked terrified. Patricia stopped at a set of double doors. He's expecting you. Lena's hand hovered over the door handle. This was it. Last chance to run, to pretend this whole thing never happened, to go back to her tiny office and her small projects and her safe, unremarkable life. She pushed the door open. Adrian's office was massive, easily the size of Lena's entire apartment. One wall was completely glass, offering a panoramic view of Chicago. The furniture was modern but not cold, all clean lines and natural materials. And in the center of it all, standing behind a desk that looked like a piece of art, was Adrian. He ditched the suit jacket from last night. His sleeves were rolled up, revealing forearms that suggested he did more than sit behind a desk all day. He looked up when she entered, and for a second Lena saw something cross his face that looked almost like relief. "Lena." He came around the desk, hand extended. "Thank you for coming." "Thank you for inviting me." She shook his hand, trying to ignore how her pulse jumped at the contact. "I have to admit, I'm a little confused about why I'm here. You said you understood the Hawthorne building. I want to know if that's true." It wasn't what she'd expected. No small talk, no easing into it, just direct, honest interest. "Okay," Lena said slowly. She set her portfolio on his desk and pulled out the first rendering, a sketch she'd done months ago, before she'd even known the building was up for restoration. "This is the main lobby as it exists now. Most of the original details are still there, just buried under decades of bad renovations." Adrian leaned over the sketch, close enough that Lena caught the faint scent of his cologne. "And this?" He pointed to her second drawing. "This is what it could be. The original ceiling was coffered oak with hand-painted details. Someone covered it with drop tiles in the 70s. The marble floor is still intact under the vinyl. The brass fixtures were removed and sold, but I found the original manufacturer. They're still in business in New York. We could commission reproductions." She was talking too fast. She knew she was, but Adrian didn't interrupt. He just listened, his gray eyes moving between her sketches and her face. "The upper floors are where it gets interesting," Lena continued, pulling out more drawings. The building was originally designed as luxury apartments, not offices. Each unit had unique molding patterns, custom fireplaces, built-in bookshelves. Most firms would strip all that out for the sake of uniform office space, but if you preserved it, if you leaned into the original design, you could create something completely different, something that honors what the building was meant to be. She stopped, suddenly aware that she'd been talking for 10 minutes straight. "Sorry, I get carried away." "Don't apologize." Adrian's voice was quiet. "This is exactly what I wanted to hear." Lena blinked. "It is?" "Every firm that's pitched me on this project has focused on maximizing square footage and minimizing costs. You're the first person to talk about what the building deserves. Most people think that's impractical. Most people are wrong." The words hung in the air between them. Lena felt her carefully constructed professional distance start to crack. "Mr. Cole." "Adrian." "Adrian," she corrected, her mouth dry. "I appreciate you looking at my work, but we both know my firm isn't qualified for a project this size. I don't have the resources or the experience or—" "What if I said I'm not interested in your firm?" Lena's stomach dropped. "Oh, I'm interested in you." The way he said it made her face flush. "I don't understand." Adrian moved around the desk, reducing the distance between them. "Cole Industries has the resources. We have the contractors, the engineers, the budget. What we don't have is vision. We don't have someone who looks at that building and sees what you see. You want me to consult? I want you to lead the design team." Lena actually laughed, a short, disbelieving sound. "That's insane." "Why?" "Because I've never led anything bigger than a kitchen renovation. Because I don't have the credentials or the reputation or—" "But you have the vision," Adrian interrupted. "And you have the passion. Everything else can be learned." Lena shook her head, feeling dizzy. "This doesn't make sense. You don't know me. You don't know my work. Last night was the first time we ever spoke. Last night, you grabbed my arm because you were desperate and scared. Most people in that position would have fallen apart. Instead, you held your ground. You looked your ex in the eye and walked away with your head up." Adrian's expression was unreadable. "That tells me something about who you are." "It tells you I'm good at faking confidence." "No. It tells me you're stronger than you think." The sincerity in his voice made Lena's throat tight. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to believe this was real, that a billionaire developer was offering her the opportunity of a lifetime based on sketches and a 10-minute conversation. But she'd believed Marcus too. She'd believed him when he said he loved her, when he promised they'd build a life together, when he swore the late nights at work were just temporary. She'd believed him right up until the day she found the texts on his phone and the empty bank account. I need to think about it, Lena said finally. Adrian nodded, not pushing. Take the time you need. But Lena? He waited until she met his eyes. Don't let fear make this decision for you. That's not... Your ex made you doubt yourself. I can see it in the way you talk about your work, like you have to apologize for being talented. Don't let him take this from you too. Lena felt tears prick her eyes and blinked them away furiously. You don't know what you're talking about. I know what it's like to have someone make you feel small. Adrian's voice was soft. I know what it's like to rebuild. There was a story there. Lena could hear it in the careful way he chose his words. But before she could ask, his phone rang. He glanced at the screen and his jaw tightened. I need to take this, he said. Patricia will give you the contract details to review. Read them over. Talk to your partner. Take whatever time you need. Lena gathered her portfolio with shaking hands. At the door, she paused. Why are you doing this? Adrian looked up from his phone, and for a moment, his carefully controlled expression slipped. What Lena saw underneath was complicated. Loneliness, maybe, or recognition. Like he saw something in her that resonated with something in himself. Because I think we could build something extraordinary together, he said. And because you deserve a chance to prove everyone wrong. Including yourself, his expression added silently. Lena left before she could do something stupid like cry, or say thank you, or ask why a billionaire would care about the broken dreams of a stranger he'd met at a party. Patricia was waiting with a folder, the contract, non-disclosure agreements, project timelines. Mr. Cole asked me to schedule a follow-up meeting for next week if you're interested. I'll let you know, Lena managed. Outside, the Chicago morning was bright and cold. Lena stood on the sidewalk, clutching the folder to her chest, and tried to process what had just happened. Her phone rang. Jess. Well, her business partner demanded, how did it go? He offered me the Hawthorne building. Silence. Then, he what? Lead designer, full creative control. He said, Lena's voice cracked. He said, I have vision. Oh my God. Lena, this is incredible. Why don't you sound happy? Because it doesn't make sense. People don't just hand out million-dollar contracts to designers they met 12 hours ago. Maybe he sees your talent. Or maybe he feels sorry for me. Maybe this is charity. Maybe he... Stop, Jess said firmly. Stop talking yourself out of this. You've been waiting for an opportunity like this your entire career. Don't sabotage it because you're scared. Lena closed her eyes. What if I fail? What if you don't? The question stayed with Lena for the rest of the day. It followed her back to her apartment, through her shower, into the sleepless hours of another long night. She read the contract until her eyes blurred, looking for the catch, the fine print that would explain why Adrian Cole was betting on someone like her. She didn't find it. What she found instead was a scope of work that gave her more creative freedom than she'd ever imagined, a budget that made her lightheaded, a timeline that was aggressive but doable, and a clause that stated all final design decisions would go through her, subject only to Adrian's approval. He was serious. This was real. At 2 a.m., Lena pulled out her phone and started typing. I'm in. When do we start? She deleted it, typed it again, deleted it again. Finally, she settled on, I'd like to accept the position. Thank you for the opportunity. Professional, safe. Nothing that revealed how her hands were shaking or how her heart was racing or how she felt like she was standing on the edge of something that would either save her or destroy her completely. Adrian's response came 3 minutes later. I'm glad. See you Monday. See you. Lena stared at those 4 words until her vision blurred. Then she screenshot the message and sent it to Jess with a single emoji, a terrified face. Jess responded immediately. You're going to be amazing. Now go to sleep before you spiral. But Lena didn't sleep. She lay in bed watching the ceiling fan turn and thinking about Adrian's gray eyes, about the way he'd said, I think we could build something extraordinary together, about the weight of possibility settling over her shoulders like a mantle she wasn't sure she was strong enough to carry. Across the city, in his silent penthouse, Adrian stood at the windows again. His daughter had woken with a nightmare an hour ago, and after settling her back to sleep, he'd found himself unable to do the same. He should regret offering Lena the project. It was impulsive, potentially reckless. The board would have questions. His investors would demand explanations. But when he'd watched her sketch the Hawthorne building's potential, when he'd seen the way her whole face transformed talking about crown molding and marble floors, he'd remembered what it felt like to care about something more than profit margins. And when she'd looked at him with those uncertain eyes and asked why he was doing this, he'd almost told her the truth, that he was tired of being surrounded by people who only saw his money, that he missed being treated like a person instead of a transaction, that she'd grabbed his arm last night and somehow made him feel normal for the first time in years. But he hadn't said any of that. He'd kept it professional, appropriate, safe. His phone buzzed with her acceptance, and Adrian felt something in his chest ease. Relief, maybe. Or anticipation. This was business, he reminded himself. A professional relationship that would benefit both of them. He almost believed it. Monday morning arrived with the kind of cold that made Chicago feel hostile. Lena stood outside the Hawthorne building at 7:30, breath fogging in the air, staring up at the structure that was now somehow her responsibility. The building looked worse in daylight. Grime covered the limestone facade. Several windows on the upper floors were boarded up. The ornate entrance, which should have been welcoming, was blocked by chain-link fencing and warning signs about structural instability. "You're early." Lena spun around. Adrian stood behind her in a wool overcoat, holding 2 paper coffee cups. He looked tired, shadows under his eyes that hadn't been there at the gala. "I couldn't sleep," Lena admitted, then immediately regretted it. Too honest, too vulnerable. "Neither could I." He handed her one of the cups. "Black coffee. I should have asked how you take it." "Black is fine." It wasn't. She preferred cream and sugar, but the gesture made her throat tight. "Thank you." They stood in silence for a moment, both looking up at the building. A bus rumbled past, belching exhaust. Someone shouted in Spanish from a construction site across the street. "It's uglier than I remembered," Adrian said. "It's perfect." He glanced at her, one eyebrow raised. "Perfect?" "All the bones are still there. See that cornice work on the 4th floor? That's original. And those windows? Someone replaced them with cheap vinyl in the 90s, but the frames are intact. We can restore them." Lena pointed upward, excitement overtaking nervousness. "The real treasure is inside, the lobby alone." "Show me." Adrian produced a key from his pocket and unlocked the fence. The chain rattled as he pulled it aside, loud in the quiet morning. Lena hesitated at the threshold. "It's safe," Adrian said. "Structurally sound. The engineers cleared it last week." "That's not what I'm worried about." "Then what?" Lena looked at him. "What if I walk in there and realize I'm wrong? What if I can't see what I thought I could see?" "Then we'll figure it out together." The way he said it, matter of fact, like failure was just another problem to solve, made something in Lena's chest loosen. She stepped through the gate. The lobby smelled like mildew and old radiator heat. The drop ceiling Adrian had mentioned was water-stained and sagging. The vinyl flooring was cracked and peeling. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, half of them burnt out. It should have been depressing. Instead, Lena felt her pulse quicken. "There," she pointed at the corner where the drop ceiling had partially collapsed. "You can see the original plasterwork. That pattern, it's called egg and dart molding. Hand-carved, probably 1889 or 1890. She crossed to the far wall and ran her fingers along what looked like cheap paneling. "This is covering something. Feel the texture? There's tile underneath, probably ceramic, maybe marble." Adrian watched her move through the space, and when Lena glanced back at him, his expression was unreadable. "What?" she asked. "Nothing. Keep going." Lena pried at the edge of the paneling. It came away easier than expected, revealing a section of green marble veined with gold. "Oh my God, Adrian, look at this." He crossed to her side, leaning close to examine the stone. "That's original?" "It has to be. Nobody installs marble this quality anymore. It's too expensive." Lena's hands were shaking with excitement. "If the whole wall is like this, we're talking about a 40-foot installation. Do you know what that would cost to reproduce?" "More than we'd want to spend." "Exactly. But we don't have to. We just have to uncover it." Adrian pulled out his phone and started taking photos. "What else?" They spent the next 2 hours exploring every floor. Lena pointed out details that had been buried or forgotten. Ornate radiator covers, pocket doors hidden behind drywall, a servant's staircase that still had its original wrought iron railing. With each discovery, her confidence grew. This wasn't just possible. It was necessary. On the top floor, they found what had once been the penthouse apartment. Someone had tried to convert it into office space, but they'd given up halfway through. Exposed wiring hung from the ceiling. The hardwood floors were buckled and water damaged. But the view, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Chicago River, was breathtaking. "This is it," Lena breathed. "This is the centerpiece. It's a disaster. It's potential." She turned to face him. "Imagine this space fully restored. Original floors refinished, those windows cleaned and repaired. We could put the master suite here exactly like the original architect intended." "Master suite?" Adrian frowned. "I thought we were converting to mixed-use commercial." "We should convert it back to residential. That's what the building wants to be." "Buildings don't want anything. They're structures." "You're wrong." Lena's voice came out more forcefully than she intended. "This building was designed as someone's home. Every detail, the high ceilings, the marble, the window placement, it was all chosen to make people feel something, safe, elegant, important. If we turn it into generic office space, we're killing what makes it special." Adrian was quiet for a long moment. "Residential is a harder sell. The profit margins are lower." "I know. The investors will push back. I know that too. So why are you arguing for it?" Lena met his eyes. "Because you didn't hire me to maximize profit. You hired me to honor what this building deserves. Those were your words." Something shifted in Adrian's expression. Surprise, maybe, or respect. "You're right. I did say that. So we'll need to run the numbers, show the board that residential makes financial sense." He pulled out his phone again, typing notes. "We'll need comparisons to similar conversions in other cities. Market analysis for luxury residential in this neighborhood. Projected occupancy rates." "Adrian." He looked up. "Thank you," Lena said quietly, "for listening. It's your project, I told you that. Most people wouldn't mean it." Adrian's jaw tightened. "I'm not most people." The words hung between them, weighted with something Lena couldn't quite name. She broke eye contact first, turning back to the windows. "My ex used to tell me my ideas were impractical," she said, surprising herself. "He said I cared too much about details that didn't matter, that I needed to be more realistic." "Your ex was an idiot. We've established this." Lena laughed despite herself. "Yeah, well, he was also right sometimes. I do get carried away. I see what something could be instead of what it is." "That's not a flaw. That's vision. Vision doesn't pay the bills." "No," Adrian agreed. "But it creates things worth building." Lena's phone buzzed, Jess asking how the site visit was going. She typed back a quick incredible and shoved the phone in her pocket. "We should get going," Adrian said. "I have a meeting at 10. They made their way back downstairs, Lena's mind already spinning with possibilities. In the lobby, she stopped to take one more look around, trying to memorize the feeling of standing in this space before everything changed. "Lena," Adrian's voice was careful. "This project is going to be intense. Long hours, tight deadlines, a lot of pressure. If at any point it becomes too much, I can handle it. I know you can. I'm saying you don't have to handle it alone." Lena turned to face him. "What does that mean?" "It means I'm not just handing you this project and walking away. We're building this together." The word "together" did something strange to Lena's equilibrium. She nodded, not trusting her voice. Outside, the morning had warmed slightly. Adrian locked the fence behind them, and they stood on the sidewalk in a silence that felt heavier than it should. "Can I ask you something?" Lena said finally. "Go ahead." "Why real estate? You could do anything. Why buildings?" Adrian was quiet for so long Lena thought he might not answer. Then, "My wife used to say buildings outlive people, that if you create something beautiful enough, it becomes part of the city's memory." He stared up at the Hawthorne building. "I lost her 6 years ago. Cancer. Stage 4 by the time they found it." Lena's chest constricted. "I'm so sorry." "Everyone's sorry. Doesn't change anything." His voice was flat, carefully controlled. "The point is, she was right. We live in buildings she designed. We walk past monuments she helped preserve. She's gone, but the work remains." "Is that why you do this? To keep her close?" "I do this because it's all I know how to do anymore." Adrian looked at her then, and the raw honesty in his face made Lena's breath catch. Everything else feels like going through the motions, but buildings I understand. Lena wanted to say something comforting, something that would ease the pain she saw in his eyes, but she knew from experience that platitudes didn't help. So instead she said, "She sounds like she was talented. She was brilliant and stubborn and completely impossible to argue with." The smallest smile touched Adrian's mouth. "You remind me of her sometimes. Is that a good thing?" "I haven't decided yet." A car pulled up to the curb, a sleek black sedan with a driver in the front seat. Adrian's ride, clearly. "I'll have Patricia send you the team contacts," he said, back to business. "Structural engineer, general contractor, preservation specialist. Set up meetings with whoever you need. The budget is in the contract we gave you." "Okay." Lena felt suddenly awkward, like she should say goodbye or thank you or something that acknowledged what he'd just shared. But Adrian was already moving toward the car. He paused with his hand on the door. "Lena, what you said about the building wanting to be residential, you're right, it does." Then he was gone, the sedan pulling smoothly into traffic. Lena stood on the sidewalk for another few minutes, processing. Adrian's wife had been an architect. He'd loved her enough that 6 years later, he still couldn't talk about her without his voice going flat. And somehow, Lena reminded him of her. She wasn't sure how to feel about that. Her phone rang. This time it was her mother. "Lena, finally, I've been calling for days." "Sorry, Mom. Things have been crazy." "I heard you ran into Marcus at some fancy gala." Lena closed her eyes. Of course her mother had heard. Chicago's Asian community was small enough that gossip traveled fast. "Who told you?" "Jenny Wu's daughter was there. She said you had a new boyfriend. A very handsome, very rich boyfriend." "He's not my boyfriend. We're working together." "But you were with him at the gala." "It's complicated." "Complicated how?" Lena started walking toward the L station, phone pressed to her ear. "Can we not do this right now?" "I'm just saying, after Marcus, you should be careful. Rich men aren't always, 'Mom, I really can't talk about this.'" A heavy sigh came through the line. "Fine. But come to dinner this week. Your father wants to see you." "I'll try." "That means no." "It means I'll try. I just got assigned a huge project. My schedule is going to be insane." "Too insane for family?" Guilt twisted in Lena's stomach. "I'll come to dinner. I promise." She hung up before her mother could extract any more commitments. The L platform was crowded with morning commuters, all of them looking as tired as Lena felt. She squeezed onto the train and spent the ride back to her office mentally cataloging everything that needed to happen in the next 2 weeks. Jess was waiting when Lena arrived, bouncing on her toes like a kid on Christmas morning. "Tell me everything." "The building is incredible. Worse than I expected, but also better. We're going residential instead of commercial, which is going to be a fight with the investors, but Adrian's on board." "Wait, Adrian? You're calling him Adrian now?" Lena paused. "That's his name." "Yeah, but last week he was Mr. Cole, billionaire developer. Now he's Adrian, your partner?" "Business partner." "Uh-huh." Jess's grin was knowing. "And how is your business partner? Still stupidly attractive?" "Jess, I'm just asking. For professional reasons." "His wife died 6 years ago. Cancer." Jess's smile faded. "Oh. Shit. Yeah. Does he have kids?" "A daughter. He mentioned her at the gala." Lena slumped into her desk chair. "I don't know why he told me about his wife. It felt personal. Like maybe too personal for a first-sight visit. Maybe he trusts you." "He doesn't know me well enough to trust me." "Or maybe," Jess said carefully, "he's lonely. And you're the first person in a while who sees him as something other than a walking bank account." Lena thought about the way Adrian had looked at the Hawthorne building, the way his voice had softened when he talked about his wife's philosophy on architecture. Jess might be right. But that didn't change the fundamental truth. Lena was here to do a job, not to be some billionaire's emotional support system. The next 3 weeks blurred together in a haze of meetings, site visits, and late-night design sessions. Lena met with the structural engineer who confirmed her suspicions about the building's bones being solid. She met with the general contractor, a gruff man named Sal, who initially seemed skeptical of her leadership but warmed up once she started talking specifics. She met with the preservation specialist, An older woman named Margaret, who actually cried when Lena showed her the marble wall they'd uncovered.
"Nobody cares about details like this anymore," Margaret said, touching the stone reverently. "I'm so glad someone finally does." Adrian was at most of the meetings, always professional, always focused. They developed a rhythm. Lena would present ideas, Adrian would ask questions. They'd debate until they reached consensus. He never pulled rank or overrode her decisions. When she pushed back on something, he listened. When she was right, he admitted it.
It should have been purely professional, but there were moments, small ones, that felt like something else. Like the Thursday afternoon when Lena showed up to a meeting with the building inspector only to find Adrian already there, having rescheduled his entire day to make sure she wouldn't have to face the notoriously difficult inspector alone. Or the evening she worked until 9, so absorbed in floor plans that she didn't notice everyone else had left, and found Adrian standing in her office doorway with takeout from the Thai place around the corner. "You need to eat," he'd said, setting the bag on her desk. "How did you know I like Thai food?" "I didn't. It's what I like." They'd eaten together in her cramped office, debating the merits of different flooring options, and for an hour, Lena had forgotten about the difference in their tax brackets. The moments stacked up. Coffee appearing on her desk when she needed it, Adrian texting her articles about historic preservation techniques, a conversation about childhood in Chicago that lasted an hour past the end of a scheduled meeting. Jess noticed. "You're spending a lot of time together," she observed one Friday afternoon. "It's a big project." "It's something." "It's nothing." But it wasn't nothing, and Lena knew it. She just didn't know what to do about it. The first real complication arrived on a rainy Tuesday in the form of a board meeting. Adrian had warned her it was coming. The investors needed updates. The budget needed approval. The timeline needed to be solidified. Lena had prepared a presentation, complete with renderings and financial projections that she'd spent a week putting together with Jess's help. "You're going to be great," Adrian said as they rode the elevator up to the conference room. "Just show them what you showed me. What if they hate it?" "They won't." "What if they think residential is a mistake?" "Then we'll convince them otherwise." "We?" Adrian looked at her. "You're not doing this alone, remember?" The conference room was all glass and steel, with a view that made Lena dizzy. 12 people sat around an enormous table, older men mostly. A few women, all of them wearing expressions that ranged from mildly interested to openly skeptical. Richard Montgomery, the Historic Foundation chairman from the gala, was there. So was a woman Adrian introduced as Catherine Zhang, Coal Industries CFO. The others were investors and board members whose names Lena immediately forgot. "Thank you all for coming," Adrian began. "I know you're eager to see the direction we're taking with the Hawthorne building. Lena Hart, our lead designer, will walk you through the proposal." 12 pairs of eyes turned to Lena. She stood, legs shaking, and clicked to the first slide. "The Hawthorne building was originally designed as luxury residential in 1889, she began. "Every architectural choice was made with that purpose in mind. Our proposal is to honor that original intent by converting the building back to high-end apartments rather than commercial space." A man at the far end of the table, gray hair, expensive watch, leaned forward. "Commercial brings higher returns. Why would we choose lower margins?" "Because the market for luxury residential in this neighborhood is underserved," Lena said, pulling up her market analysis. "There are 43 commercial buildings within a 2-block radius. There are only 5 residential options, and none of them are historic conversions." "That's because historic conversions are expensive," another board member interjected. "They are," Lena agreed, "but they also command premium prices. Buyers pay for uniqueness, for character, for the story. We can price these units 30% higher than comparable modern construction because we're offering something nobody else can provide." She clicked through her slides, showing comparable projects in Boston, Philadelphia, and San Francisco. The numbers were solid. Jess had made sure of that. But Lena could feel the skepticism in the room. Catherine Zhang spoke up. "The timeline concerns me. Historic restoration takes longer than standard construction. How do we prevent delays?" "We prioritize preservation over perfection," Lena said. "Where original materials exist, we restore them. Where they don't, we source appropriate reproductions. I've already identified suppliers for everything from marble to hardware. The general contractor estimates 18 months from permit approval to occupancy." 18 months? Gray hair man again.
That's optimistic. It's realistic if we start immediately.
And if something goes wrong, if we hit structural issues or permitting problems? Lena felt her confidence waver. She didn't have a good answer for that because construction always hit problems. Adrian must have sensed her hesitation because he stepped in. We've built contingency into the budget and timeline, he said smoothly. But more importantly, we've chosen a team that understands this building. Lena's not interested in cutting corners or rushing the process. She's interested in doing it right. With all due respect, Adrian, Catherine said, right doesn't always mean profitable. No, but it means sustainable. Adrian's voice was calm but firm. We could gut this building and turn it into another forgettable office complex. We'd make our money back in 5 years. Or we could create something that becomes a landmark, that people talk about, that draws attention to our other properties. The Hawthorne building could be a flagship project that defines what Cole Industries stands for. And what do we stand for? Gray-hair man asked.
Quality, vision, preservation of what matters. Adrian looked directly at the man. Isn't that why you invested in the first place, Richard? So gray hair was Richard something. Lena made a mental note. Richard leaned back in his chair. I invested because your projects make money, Adrian. Sentiment doesn't pay dividends. Neither does mediocrity. The room went quiet. Lena held her breath.
Finally, Catherine spoke. I'd like to see more detailed financial projections before we commit. Break down the cost per unit, projected sale prices, marketing budget. If the numbers support residential, I'm willing to consider it. I'll have them to you by Friday, Lena said quickly. The meeting continued for another hour. Questions about permits, about contractors, about materials. Lena answered what she could and promised to research what she couldn't. By the time it ended, her shirt was stuck to her back with nervous sweat. In the elevator afterward, Adrian was silent. I didn't convince them, Lena said. You gave them something to think about. That's not the same thing. No, but it's a start.
Adrian looked at her. You held your own in there. That's not easy with this crowd. They think I'm crazy. They think you're passionate. There's a difference. The elevator doors opened into the parking garage. Lena's car was on the street 3 blocks away. Adrian's driver was waiting by the sedan. Can I give you a ride? Adrian asked. Lena should have said no, should have maintained professional boundaries. Instead, she heard herself say, okay. The inside of the sedan smelled like leather and expensive cologne. Lena gave the driver her address and then sat in awkward silence, acutely aware of how close Adrian was in the enclosed space. You did well today, he said after a moment. I froze when Richard asked about problems. Everyone freezes with Richard. He's intimidating on purpose. How long have you known him? 20 years. He mentored me when I was starting out. Adrian looked out the window at the city passing by. He's not wrong, you know. Sentiment doesn't pay dividends. Then why are you fighting for this? Adrian was quiet for a long time. My wife used to say that buildings reflect who we are as a society. If we only build for profit, we end up with cities that have no soul. He turned back to Lena. I spent 6 years building soulless structures because it was easier than caring. This project, the Hawthorne building, it's the first time I've cared in a long time. The honesty in his voice made Lena's throat tight. I won't let you down. I know. The driver pulled up outside Lena's building, a converted factory in a neighborhood that was trying hard to gentrify but hadn't quite made it yet. Lena gathered her bag, hyper-aware of how shabby her home must seem compared to wherever Adrian lived. Thank you for the ride, she said. Lena. Adrian's hand caught her wrist, gentle but firm. You don't have to prove anything to me. I already know you can do this. His touch sent electricity up her arm. Lena pulled away carefully. I'll have those projections to Catherine by Friday. She escaped into her building before she could do something stupid like lean back into the car or ask him to come upstairs or admit that she was starting to look forward to their meetings for reasons that had nothing to do with architecture. Inside her apartment, Lena dropped her bag and pressed her palms against her eyes. This was getting complicated. Adrian was her boss, technically, her client, the person whose money was funding her entire career resurrection. Getting involved with him would be a disaster, even if his touch made her skin hum, even if the way he looked at her sometimes made her feel seen in a way Marcus never had, even if she was starting to care about him in a way that terrified her. Her phone buzzed. A text from Adrian. You forgot this in the car.
A photo followed, her notebook, the one with all her Hawthorne sketches. "I'll have Patricia bring it to your office tomorrow," he added. Lena typed back, "Thank you." Then, because she was apparently incapable of maintaining boundaries, "And thank you for backing me up today. Always." One word. It shouldn't have meant as much as it did. Lena spent the next 3 days buried in spreadsheets, building the financial projections Catherine had requested. Jess helped, running numbers until Lena's eyes crossed. By Thursday night, they had something solid, proof that residential wasn't just feasible, it was smarter long-term than commercial conversion. "This is good," Jess said, reviewing the final document. "This is really good." Good enough to convince a room full of skeptical investors? Good enough to convince anyone who actually looks at the data? Lena sent the projections to Catherine at 11 p.m., too anxious to wait until morning. The response came back within minutes. "Impressive work. Let's discuss Monday." Lena should have felt triumphant. Instead, she felt exhausted and wired and desperately in need of someone to talk to who wasn't Jess. She pulled up Adrian's contact before she could overthink it. Sent the projections to Catherine. She wants to meet Monday. His response came immediately, like he'd been waiting. That's a good sign. Or she's going to tear them apart in person. She could do that over email. If she wants a meeting, she's interested. How do you know? Because I've known Catherine for 15 years. Trust me. Lena stared at those last two words. Trust me. She barely knew Adrian Cole. Everything rational told her to keep her distance, to maintain professional boundaries, to remember that he was a billionaire and she was a struggling designer and fairy tales didn't happen in real life. But sitting alone in her apartment at 11:30 on a Thursday night, reading his texts and remembering the way he'd caught her wrist in the car, Lena realized something terrifying. She did trust him, and that was going to be a problem. The meeting with Catherine went better than Lena expected. By Wednesday afternoon, the board had approved the residential conversion with only minor modifications to the budget. Lena should have been celebrating. Instead, she was standing in the Hawthorne building's lobby with a splitting headache, watching two contractors argue about load-bearing walls while her phone buzzed with increasingly urgent messages from the marble supplier. "We can't remove that beam," the younger contractor insisted, jabbing his finger at the blueprint. "The whole second floor will collapse." "Nobody's removing it," Lena said, rubbing her temples. "We're exposing it. There's a difference." "Still weakens the structure." "Actually, it doesn't." Adrian's voice came from behind her. Lena turned to find him crossing the lobby, still in his suit from whatever meeting he'd just left. "The engineering report specifically cleared that beam for exposure. Page 47, if you want to check." The contractor's jaw tightened, but he pulled out his copy of the report. Adrian moved to stand beside Lena, close enough that she caught the scent of his cologne. "You look tired," he said quietly. "It's only 3 p.m. That's not an answer." Lena wanted to snap at him, to say she was fine, to maintain some semblance of professional composure. Instead, she admitted, "I've been here since 6. The marble shipment is delayed. The permits office lost our application. Again. And Sal's crew found asbestos in the third-floor ceiling." "How much asbestos?" "Enough that we need abatement before any demolition work can start." Adrian's expression didn't change, but Lena saw his jaw tighten. "That's going to push the timeline back. 2 weeks minimum, maybe 3. The board won't like that." "I know." Lena's voice came out sharper than intended. "But unless you want workers exposed to carcinogens, we don't have a choice." "I wasn't criticizing, I was stating a fact." "Well, your fact isn't helpful right now." They stared at each other for a beat too long. The contractors had stopped arguing to watch them, clearly sensing the tension. "Can you give us a minute?" Adrian said to the crew. It wasn't a question. The men filed out, leaving Lena and Adrian alone in the dusty lobby. Afternoon light slanted through the dirty windows, catching particles of dust in the air. "I'm sorry," Lena said after a moment. "That was unprofessional." "You're exhausted and frustrated. It's understandable. It's still unprofessional." "Lena." Adrian's voice was gentle. "When was the last time you took a day off?" She tried to remember and couldn't. "I don't know. A while." "You're going to burn out." "I'm fine." "You just snapped at me over a basic observation. You're not fine." Lena wanted to argue, but the truth was her hands were shaking and she couldn't remember if she'd eaten lunch or breakfast. The pressure of the project was getting to her. Every delay felt personal, every setback like proof that she wasn't qualified for this. I can't afford to burn out, she said finally. This project is everything. If I fail, you're not going to fail. You don't know that.
I do, actually. Adrian stepped closer. You're the most dedicated person I've ever worked with. You care about every detail, you fight for what's right, and you don't give up even when things get hard. Those aren't the qualities of someone who fails. The sincerity in his voice made Lena's eyes sting. She blinked hard, refusing to cry in the middle of a construction site. Thank you, she managed. Come to dinner with me. Lena's head snapped up. What? Dinner, tonight. You need to eat, and we need to discuss the asbestos situation anyway. We might as well do both. That's not... We can discuss it here. We could, Adrian agreed. But you look like you're about to collapse, and I'd rather not have that conversation in a building full of dust and asbestos. He had a point. Lena knew he had a point. But dinner felt dangerous. Dinner felt like crossing a line they'd been carefully avoiding for weeks. Just dinner, Adrian added, reading her hesitation. Business dinner. We'll talk about the project, figure out how to handle the board, and make sure you eat something that isn't coffee and anxiety. Despite everything, Lena almost smiled. I don't eat anxiety. You sure? Because it seems to be your primary food group lately. Fine. Dinner, but somewhere low-key. I'm not dressed for anywhere fancy. Adrian's eyes traveled over her paint-splattered jeans and faded work shirt. You look fine. I look like I've been crawling through a construction site. Because you have been. He pulled out his phone. There's a bistro 2 blocks from here. French, quiet, excellent wine list. I'll make a reservation. Lena should have said no. Should have insisted they keep things professional, keep their distance, maintain the boundaries that were already getting dangerously blurry. But she was tired and overwhelmed, and the thought of spending an evening with someone who actually understood what she was dealing with was too tempting to resist. Okay, she heard herself say, but I'm paying for my own meal. Lena, I'm serious. This is business. I pay my own way. Adrian looked like he wanted to argue, but thought better of it. Fine. Meet me there at 7. He texted her the address and left before Lena could change her mind. She spent the rest of the afternoon trying not to think about what she'd just agreed to while simultaneously panicking about what to wear. By 6:30, she'd given up on the work site and driven home to change into the only clean dress she owned that wasn't completely casual, a navy blue sheath that Jess had talked her into buying last year. The bistro was exactly what Adrian had described. Small, intimate, with soft lighting and tables spaced far enough apart for private conversation. Adrian was already there when Lena arrived, seated at a corner table with a glass of wine in front of him. He'd ditched the suit jacket and tie, and with his sleeves rolled up, he looked younger, more approachable, more dangerous. You changed, he observed as Lena sat down. So did you. I went home first, needed to check on my daughter. It was the first time he'd mentioned his daughter since the gala. Lena seized on the topic gratefully. How old is she? 7? Almost 8? Something softened in Adrian's expression. Her name is Sophie. She's with her nanny tonight, probably attempting to stay up past bedtime. Does she do that often? Every chance she gets. Adrian's mouth quirked. She's stubborn, like her mother was. The mention of his wife created a small silence. Lena took a sip of water, unsure how to respond. I'm sorry, Adrian said. I keep bringing her up. You don't have to apologize. It makes people uncomfortable. I'm not uncomfortable. Lena met his eyes. You loved her. You're allowed to talk about her. Adrian studied her for a long moment. Most people don't see it that way. They think 6 years is long enough to move on. That's stupid. It is, isn't it? He smiled slightly. Thank you. The waiter appeared and they ordered coq au vin for Lena, steak frites for Adrian, a bottle of red wine to share despite Lena's protests about keeping it professional. Once the waiter left, Adrian leaned back in his chair. So, asbestos. Straight to business? You insisted this was a business dinner. He had her there. Lena pulled out her phone and showed him the abatement quotes. 3 different companies, all saying roughly the same timeline. 2 to 3 weeks, maybe longer if they find more contamination. Adrian scrolled through the estimates, his expression unreadable. These are expensive. Asbestos removal always is.
We'll have to pull from the contingency budget. I know. Lena twisted her napkin in her lap. I'm sorry. I should have anticipated this.
How? The inspection report didn't flag it?
I should have insisted on more thorough testing. Lena. Adrian set down his phone. Stop apologizing for things that aren't your fault. We knew historic buildings come with surprises. This is just one of them. The wine arrived. Adrian poured for both of them, and Lena took a long sip, letting the warmth spread through her chest. The board is going to blame me, she said. Let them. I'll handle it. You shouldn't have to handle it. This is my project. It's our project, Adrian corrected. And I'm the one who convinced them to take a chance on residential conversion. If anyone's taking heat, it's me. Lena wanted to argue, but the determination in his voice made it clear the discussion was over. They lapsed into silence as their food arrived. The coq au vin was perfect, rich and savory, exactly what Lena needed after the day she'd had. This is good, she said around a mouthful. I'm glad you approve. Adrian cut into his steak. You need to eat more. You're going to make yourself sick. I eat. Coffee doesn't count. I had a granola bar this morning. Lena. What? It was a protein granola bar? Very nutritious. Adrian shook his head, but he was almost smiling. They ate in comfortable silence for a while, and Lena felt some of the day's tension start to ease. This was nice. Easy, the kind of dinner she might have with a friend, if she had time for friends anymore. Can I ask you something? Adrian said eventually. Go ahead. Why architecture? Why historic preservation specifically? Lena set down her fork. My grandmother's house. She lived in this old Victorian in Albany Park. It was falling apart, but she refused to sell. Said it was the only thing she had left from the old country. Which country? Vietnam. She came over in 1975 with nothing but 2 suitcases and my mom. Lena smiled at the memory. The house was a wreck. Cracked plaster, leaky roof, ancient plumbing, but she saw it as this beautiful thing worth saving. Did she save it? Eventually. It took years, but she restored it piece by piece. She let me help when I was a kid. I'd hold the ladder while she painted, hand her tools when she was fixing the porch. She taught me that buildings have souls, that they deserve respect. She sounds like she was an incredible woman. She was. Lena's throat tightened. She died when I was 22. Left me the house in her will. Do you still have it? No. The word came out bitter. Marcus convinced me to sell it. Said we needed the money for his business venture. Turned out the business venture was imaginary, and the money went to his new girlfriend's credit card bills. Adrian's expression darkened. I really hate your ex. Join the club. Did you get any of the money back? Some. Not enough. Lena took another sip of wine. The worst part is losing the house. It was the only thing I had left of my grandmother, and I just gave it away. You didn't give it away. You were manipulated. Same result. No, Adrian said firmly. Intent matters. You trusted someone you loved. That's not a weakness. Lena wanted to believe him, wanted to think that falling for Marcus's lies didn't make her stupid or naive or fundamentally broken. But 3 months later, the shame still sat heavy in her chest. Your turn, she said, deflecting. Why did you get into real estate? My father was a developer. Small-scale stuff. Strip malls, storage facilities, the occasional residential project. Nothing glamorous. Adrian swirled his wine. I grew up on construction sites. Learned to read blueprints before I learned to drive. Did he teach you? He tried. We didn't always see eye to eye. Adrian's jaw tightened slightly. He thought I was too idealistic. Said caring about architecture was fine for architects, but developers needed to focus on profit. Sounds familiar. Yeah, well, he wasn't entirely wrong. I nearly bankrupted my first company being too particular about design details. What changed? I met Elena, my wife. She was the architect on a hotel renovation I was funding. I wanted to cut costs by using cheaper materials. She threatened to walk off the project unless I maintained the original specs. Did you? I did. And the hotel won 3 design awards and became one of the most profitable properties in my portfolio. Adrian's expression softened. She taught me that quality and profit aren't mutually exclusive, that sometimes caring about the details is what makes a project successful. She sounds like she was good for you. She was good for everyone. Adrian finished his wine and poured another glass. I don't know who I would have become without her. Someone colder, probably. More like my father. Lena thought about the man across from her. Reserved, yes, but not cold. There was warmth underneath, carefully guarded but real. I don't think you could be cold if you tried, she said. Adrian looked at her, something unreadable in his gray eyes. You'd be surprised. The air between them shifted, charged with something Lena didn't want to name. She looked away first, focusing on her nearly empty plate. We should talk about the timeline, she said, retreating to safer ground. If we're delayed 3 weeks on abatement, we need to adjust the whole schedule. Adrian let her change the subject without comment. They spent the rest of dinner working through logistics, which phases could be compressed, which contractors could work simultaneously, how to present the delays to the board in a way that wouldn't cause panic. By the time dessert arrived, creme brulee, that Lena insisted they share, they had a plan. This might actually work, Lena said, reviewing her notes. Of course it will work. You're brilliant. The casual compliment made Lena flush. I'm persistent. There's a difference. You're both. She didn't know how to respond to that, so she focused on cracking the caramelized sugar on top of the dessert. Adrian watched her with an expression that made her skin warm. What? Lena asked finally. Nothing. You're just different than I expected. Different how? At the gala, I thought you were fragile, like you might shatter if someone looked at you wrong. Adrian leaned forward slightly. But you're not fragile at all. You're steel-wrapped in kindness. Lena's breath caught. That's the wine talking. No, it's not. His voice was quiet but certain. You walked into that board meeting terrified and still held your ground. You fight for every detail of this project like it's personal. You care so much it has to hurt sometimes. It does hurt, Lena admitted before she could stop herself. All the time, caring this much about things that might not work out, it's exhausting. Then why do it? Because what's the alternative? Stop caring? Build things I don't believe in? Lena shook her head. I tried that with Marcus. I tried to be practical and realistic in all the things he said I should be. It made me miserable. So you'd rather be exhausted than miserable. Wouldn't you? Adrian smiled, genuine and unguarded in a way Lena had never seen. Yes, I would. They finished the dessert in a silence that felt heavy with things unsaid. When the check came, Lena reached for it immediately, but Adrian was faster. I said I was paying for myself, Lena protested. And I'm saying this one's on me. Adrian, consider it a thank you for putting up with difficult contractors and impossible timelines and a board full of skeptics. That's my job. It's more than that. Adrian's expression was serious. You brought this project back to life. You made me care about it again. That's worth more than dinner. Lena's throat went tight. She wanted to say something witty or dismissive, something that would deflect the intensity of the moment. Instead, she just said, Thank you. Outside, the night had turned cold. Lena wrapped her coat tighter and tried to remember where she'd parked. Adrian's car was right in front of the restaurant. Of course it was. Can I drive you home? He asked. I have my car. Where? Lena looked around, disoriented. 3 blocks? Maybe 4. Lena, it's freezing. Let me drive you to your car at least. It was a reasonable offer, a kind offer. But sitting in close quarters with Adrian right now, with the wine still warm in her veins and his compliments still echoing in her head, felt like a terrible idea. I'll walk, she said. I need the air. Adrian looked like he wanted to argue, but didn't. Text me when you get home safe. I will. She made it half a block before she heard footsteps behind her. Lena turned to find Adrian following, hands in his pockets. What are you doing? She asked. Walking you to your car. You don't need to do that. I know. He fell into step beside her. I want to. They walked in silence, their breath fogging in the cold air. Lena's car was parked under a streetlight that flickered intermittently, making shadows jump and dance. This is me, she said, fishing for her keys. Safe neighborhood? Safe enough. Lena unlocked the door. Thank you. For dinner. For everything. Lena. Adrian caught her hand before she could get in the car. His palm was warm against her cold fingers. You don't have to thank me. Yes, I do. You didn't have to. I know I didn't have to. I wanted to. His thumb brushed across her knuckles. I like spending time with you. Not because you work for me or because of the project. Just because. Lena's heart hammered against her ribs. She should pull away. Should get in her car and drive home and maintain the professional distance that was rapidly crumbling. Instead, she stood frozen, looking up at Adrian's face in the flickering streetlight. This is a bad idea, she whispered. Probably. We work together. We do. And you're you. I'm just... Don't. Adrian's voice was soft but firm. Don't diminish yourself. Not to me. Adrian. Her phone buzzed. Then again. Then a rapid series of buzzes that shattered the moment. Lena pulled away and checked the screen. 15 missed calls from Jess. Something's wrong, Lena said, dialing back immediately. Jess answered on the first ring. Finally, where have you been? At dinner. What's wrong? Marcus showed up at the office. Lena's blood went cold. What? Like an hour ago. He was pounding on the door saying he needed to talk to you. I told him to leave, but he wouldn't. Lena, I think he was drunk. Did he hurt you? No, I called the cops and they made him leave, but he was really angry. He kept saying you stole his project, that you're sleeping your way to success, all this horrible stuff. I'm coming to the office. Lena, he's gone. The cops scared him off. I'm still coming. Lena was already getting in her car. Stay there. Lock the doors. I'll be there in 20 minutes. She hung up and looked at Adrian, who'd clearly heard enough of the conversation to understand the situation. I'll follow you, he said, already heading to his car. You don't need to, I'm following you. There was no point arguing. Lena drove too fast through the empty streets, her mind racing. Marcus at her office. Marcus drunk and angry. After 3 months of silence, why now? Because of the Hawthorne building, because her name had started appearing in the architecture press, because he couldn't stand to see her succeed. Jess was waiting outside the office when Lena arrived, wrapped in her coat and looking shaken. Adrian pulled up seconds later, parking behind Lena's car. You okay? Lena asked, wrapping Jess in a hug. I'm fine, just freaked out. Jess noticed Adrian and blinked. Mr. Cole, hi. Adrian, he said, what exactly happened? They went inside while Jess recounted the story. Marcus showing up around 8, already drunk, demanding to know where Lena was. He'd seen the article in the Tribune about the Hawthorne project and assumed Lena had used their relationship to get the contract. He said you were using Cole Industries for money, Jess said quietly. That you're no different than you were with him. Lena felt like she'd been slapped. She'd never used Marcus for anything. He'd been the one bleeding her dry, taking her money and her trust in her grandmother's house. That's not true, she said, her voice shaking. I know that. Jess squeezed her hand. Everyone knows that except him. Adrian's expression had gone cold. Did he threaten you? Not directly. But the way he was talking, Lena, I think he might come back. Then we're getting building security, Adrian said, pulling out his phone, and filing a restraining order. That seems extreme, Lena protested weakly. He showed up drunk at your workplace making accusations. That's harassment. Adrian was already dialing. I'm not taking chances with your safety. He stepped away to make the call, leaving Lena and Jess alone. Jess gave her a meaningful look. So, she said, business dinner? Don't. He followed you here. He's calling security. That's not business. Jess, you like him. It doesn't matter. Of course it matters. Jess lowered her voice. Lena, when's the last time someone cared about you like this? Actual caring, not Marcus's manipulative bullshit. It's complicated. Life is complicated. That doesn't mean you have to be alone. Adrian returned before Lena could respond. Security company is sending someone over tonight to assess the building. In the meantime, you both should go home. I'll stay until they arrive. You don't have to do that, Lena said. Yes, I do. His voice left no room for argument. Go home. Get some sleep. We'll deal with Marcus in the morning. Lena wanted to argue, but exhaustion was catching up with her. She let Jess drive her home, too shaken to trust herself behind the wheel. In her apartment, Lena stood at her window and looked out at the city. Somewhere out there, Marcus was nursing his anger and his wounded pride. Somewhere out there, Adrian was waiting at her office for security to arrive, protecting her even though he didn't have to. Her phone buzzed. Adrian, security's here, heading home. Make sure your door is locked. Lena typed back, thank you for everything, get some rest. Tomorrow we file that restraining order.
You really don't have to get involved in this. Too late. I'm already involved. The words sat on her screen, loaded with meaning. Lena stared at them until her vision blurred, then finally responded, good night, Adrian. Good night.
She didn't sleep. Every noise in the hallway made her jump. Every car door slamming outside her window sent her heart racing. By 6 a.m., she gave up and headed to the office, where she found a new security camera installed above the door and a guard sitting in the lobby. Mr. Cole hired me, the guard explained. I'll be here during business hours until further notice. Lena didn't know whether to be grateful or mortified. By the time Adrian called at 9, she'd settled on both.
Did you sleep at all? He asked without preamble. Did you? That's not an answer. Neither was yours, Adrian sighed. I have the lawyer drafting the restraining order. I need details about Marcus, full name, last known address, history of harassment. Lena walked him through everything, her stomach churning as she recounted Marcus's worst moments. The night he'd screamed at her for questioning a charge on their credit card. The time he'd grabbed her wrist hard enough to bruise when she'd threatened to leave. The morning she'd woken to find him gone and their bank account empty. Jesus, Lena, Adrian said when she finished. Why didn't you tell me any of this before? Because it's embarrassing. Because I should have seen it coming. Because... Stop. None of that was your fault. Feels like it was. It wasn't. Adrian's voice was gentle. And we're making sure he can't hurt you again. The restraining order was filed by noon. By 2 p.m., Marcus had been served. By 4 p.m., Lena's phone was flooded with texts from him, angry, pleading, accusatory, desperate. She blocked his number and tried to focus on work, but her hand shook every time she heard the office door open. Adrian showed up at 5 with takeout and a determined expression. You're working too late again, he said, setting food on her desk. I have a lot to catch up on. You had a traumatic night. You're allowed to take a break. I'm fine. Lena. He sat down across from her. Talk to me. And maybe it was exhaustion or fear or the way Adrian looked at her like she mattered, but Lena felt her carefully constructed walls crumble. I'm scared, she admitted. Marcus knows where I work. He knows where I live. What if the restraining order just makes him angrier? Then we get you somewhere safe. I can't afford to move. You could stay at my place. Lena's head snapped up. What? I have a guest room. Sophie would love the company. You'd be safe. Adrian, we can't. Why not? Because people will talk. Because it's crossing a line. Because... Lena's voice broke. Because I can't let you keep saving me. Why not? Adrian asked again, quieter this time. Because I need to be able to save myself. You are saving yourself, he said. You're building a career, fighting for your vision, standing up to people who want to diminish you. Accepting help doesn't make you weak. Lena pressed her palms against her eyes, fighting tears. Everything is so complicated. It doesn't have to be. Yes, it does. You're my boss, my client. We can't, whatever this is, we can't. Adrian was quiet for a long moment. Then, you're right. We can't. The words should have been a relief. Instead, they felt like a door closing. I should go, Adrian said, standing. The takeout is from that Thai place you like. Make sure you eat. He was gone before Lana could respond, leaving her alone with cold pad Thai and the terrible realization that she'd just pushed away the one person who made her feel safe. Her phone buzzed. Not Adrian. Jess. Did something happen? Adrian just called asking me to check on you. Lena stared at the message. Even after she'd told him they couldn't be together, he was still taking care of her. She typed back, I'm fine, just tired. But she wasn't fine. And as she sat alone in her office, watching the security guard patrol past her window, Lena wondered if she'd just made the biggest mistake of her life. The next 2 weeks felt like walking through fog. Lena threw herself into the Hawthorne project with an intensity that bordered on obsessive, arriving before dawn and leaving long after dark.
The asbestos abatement was finally underway, crews in hazmat suits moving through the third floor like ghosts. She coordinated with contractors, argued with suppliers, revised floor plans until her eyes crossed, anything to avoid thinking about Adrian. Their interactions became painfully professional. He attended meetings when required, reviewed her proposals with efficient precision, and kept every conversation strictly about the building. The easy warmth that had developed between them vanished, replaced by a polite distance that made Lena's chest ache. She told herself this was better, safer, the right choice. She didn't believe it for a second.
"You look like hell," Jess observed on a Thursday afternoon, finding Lena hunched over her desk, surrounded by fabric samples. "Thanks. That's exactly what I needed to hear." "I'm serious. When's the last time you went home before midnight?" Lena tried to remember and couldn't. "The work needs to get done." "The work will still be there tomorrow." Jess perched on the edge of the desk. "What happened with Adrian?" "Nothing happened." "Lena."
We decided to keep things professional, that's all. That's all? Jess's voice rose. 2 weeks ago, he was offering you his guest room and looking at you like you hung the moon. Now you both flinch when you're in the same room. That's not nothing. It's better this way. For who? Lena didn't have an answer. She turned back to the fabric samples, trying to decide between two nearly identical shades of cream for the lobby curtains. They both looked the same. Everything looked the same lately. Her phone buzzed. Patricia, Adrian's assistant. Mr. Cole would like to schedule a walkthrough of the Hawthorne building tomorrow at 4 p.m. Please confirm availability. Lena typed back. Confirmed. Professional. Distant. Exactly what she'd asked for. So why did it feel like losing something important? The walkthrough the next day was torture. Adrian arrived exactly on time, accompanied by Margaret from the Preservation Society and Richard Montgomery from the board. They moved through the building floor by floor, Lena explaining the progress while Adrian took notes on his phone. The abatement should be complete by next Friday, Lena said as they stood in the third-floor hallway. Then we can start the actual restoration work up here. Timeline still on track? Richard asked. Mostly. We lost 2 weeks, but we're making it up in other phases. Good. Richard examined the exposed brick where workers had removed layers of drywall. I have to admit, Ms. Hart, I had my doubts about this approach. But seeing it come together, you might have been right about the residential conversion. It was the closest thing to a compliment Richard had ever given her. Lena should have felt triumphant. Instead, she felt hollow. Adrian hadn't said a word since they started the tour. On the top floor, Margaret actually gasped when she saw the penthouse space. The windows had been cleaned, letting in afternoon light that made the hardwood floors glow despite their water damage. This is extraordinary, Margaret breathed. The original molding is intact. And these windows, they're original too, aren't they? Most of them, Lena confirmed. We're having them restored rather than replaced. It's more expensive, but it maintains the integrity of the space, Adrian finished quietly. It was the first time he'd spoken directly to her in an hour. Their eyes met, held. Something passed between them that made Lena's breath catch. Richard cleared his throat. Well, I think we've seen enough. Excellent work, Ms. Hart. Adrian, we should discuss the budget adjustments. You go ahead, Adrian said, not looking away from Lena. I want to review a few details here. Richard and Margaret left, their footsteps echoing down the stairwell. The silence they left behind was deafening. You've been avoiding me, Adrian said finally. I've been working. Lena, what do you want me to say? She turned to face the windows, unable to look at him. You were right. This can't be anything more than professional. I never said that's what I wanted, but it's what we agreed on. You agreed. I just stopped fighting it. Adrian moved closer, and Lena could feel the warmth of him at her back. Do you know how hard it's been? Sitting in meetings with you, watching you bring this building to life and pretending I don't... He stopped. Lena turned. Don't what? Adrian's jaw was tight. Don't want more than I should. The admission hung between them like a live wire. Lena's heart hammered so hard she was sure he could hear it. Adrian, you were right to push me away, he continued, his voice rough. You work for me. There's a power imbalance. It would be inappropriate and probably stupid, and I think about you constantly, Lena interrupted. I think about that dinner, about the way you look at me sometimes. About how safe I feel when you're around, even though that terrifies me. Adrian's eyes darkened. Lena, I know we can't. I know all the reasons why this is a bad idea, but knowing doesn't make it easier. They stood a foot apart in the empty penthouse, the afternoon light painting everything gold. Lena could see the pulse jumping in Adrian's throat, the way his hands flexed at his sides like he was fighting the urge to reach for her. What do we do? She whispered. I don't know. We can't keep going like this. The distance, it's killing me. Me too. Adrian took a step closer, then another. Close enough that Lena had to tilt her head back to maintain eye contact. Close enough that she could see the silver threading through his dark hair, the fine lines around his eyes that appeared when he was tired. Tell me to leave, Adrian said softly. Tell me this is a bad idea and we should keep our distance, and I'll go. Lena opened her mouth, closed it. She should tell him to leave, should protect herself from the inevitable hurt that came from wanting someone she couldn't have. I can't, she admitted. Adrian's hand came up to cup her face, his thumb brushing across her cheekbone. Lena. The door banged open downstairs. Voices echoed up, Sal and his crew, back from their break. Adrian dropped his hand and stepped back so quickly it felt like a rejection. We should go, he said, his voice carefully neutral, before they wonder what we're doing up here. The moment shattered. Lena followed him downstairs, maintaining careful distance, hyper-aware of how close they'd come to crossing a line they couldn't uncross. In the lobby, Sal was examining the exposed marble wall. Looking good, Ms. Hart. We should have this whole section uncovered by Monday. That's great, Lena managed, her voice only slightly unsteady. Just make sure you're careful around the corners. The stone is fragile. Will do. Adrian's car was waiting outside. He paused at the door, and for a second Lena thought he might say something. Instead, he just nodded and left. Lena stood in the lobby for a long time after he was gone, staring at the marble wall and trying to figure out how she'd ended up here, falling for a man she couldn't have while building a project that was supposed to save her career but was slowly breaking her heart instead. Her phone buzzed. Not Adrian. Marcus. The message came from a new number. He'd been blocked on the old one. I saw you with him. You're Billionaire. You think you're so much better now. Lena's hands started shaking. She blocked the new number immediately and called the lawyer handling the restraining order. He's not supposed to contact you at all, the lawyer said. This is a violation. We can report it to the police. Will that actually stop him? It should, but restraining orders aren't foolproof. Lena hung up feeling worse than before. She was sitting on the floor of the Hawthorne lobby, surrounded by construction debris and fading light, when her phone rang again. This time, it was Adrian. Patricia said you called the lawyer, he said without preamble. What happened? Marcus texted from a new number. It's fine, I blocked him. It's not fine, what did he say? Lena read him the message. Adrian's silence on the other end was somehow worse than if he'd started yelling. I'm coming to get you, he said finally. Adrian, don't argue. I'm not letting you sit in that building alone when he's clearly watching you. How do you know I'm in the building? Because I know you. You're always in that building. He wasn't wrong. Lena looked around at the dusty lobby, at the exposed marble and the construction equipment and the dreams she was slowly building into reality. I'm fine, she said, but her voice cracked on the last word. Lena, Adrian's voice gentled. Please, let me help. 20 minutes later, his car pulled up outside. Lena climbed in, suddenly exhausted. They drove in silence through the early evening traffic, and it took Lena several minutes to realize they weren't heading toward her apartment. Where are we going? She asked. My place. Adrian? Just for dinner. Sophie wants to meet you. Lena's stomach flipped. You told your daughter about me? She saw your picture in the Tribune, the article about the Hawthorne project. Adrian's hands tightened on the steering wheel. She asked if you were my friend. I said yes. Are we? Friends? I don't know what we are. He glanced at her. But I know I want you to meet her. Adrian's building was in the Gold Coast, all glass and steel and intimidating luxury. The penthouse elevator required a key card. Lena's anxiety ratcheted up with every floor they climbed. She's going to hate me, Lena said. She's not going to hate you. Kids always know when adults are lying about their feelings. She'll take one look at us and know something's off. Lena, Adrian caught her hand. Breathe. The elevator doors opened directly into the penthouse. Lena had a vague impression of high ceilings and modern furniture and windows overlooking the lake before a small girl came running around the corner. Dad, you're late. Maria said we couldn't start dinner until you... Sophie skidded to a stop, her eyes going wide. Oh, hi. She was tiny, all dark curls and huge gray eyes that were pure Adrian. She wore leggings with stars on them and a t-shirt that said Future Architect in rainbow letters. Sophie, this is Lena, Adrian said. Lena, my daughter Sophie. Hi, Lena managed, suddenly tongue-tied. Sophie studied her with the kind of intensity only 7-year-olds possessed. You're the lady from the newspaper, the one fixing the old building. That's me. Dad says you're really smart. He did? He talks about you a lot. Sophie's gaze shifted between them, clearly calculating. Are you his girlfriend? Sophie, Adrian started. It's okay, Lena interrupted. She crouched down to Sophie's eye level. Your dad and I work together. We're friends. Just friends? Sophie, Adrian said again, more firmly this time. What? I'm just asking. Sophie turned back to Lena. Do you want to see my room? I have a dollhouse Dad built. It has working lights and everything. Before Lena could answer, Sophie grabbed her hand and dragged her down a hallway. The dollhouse was indeed impressive. A 3-story Victorian with intricate details and tiny furniture in every room. Dad made it for my birthday, Sophie explained, settling cross-legged on the floor. It took him 3 months. He's really good at building things. I can see that. Lena examined the tiny crown molding, the miniature chandelier in the foyer. This is incredible craftsmanship. He used to build things with my mom before she died. The casual way Sophie said it made Lena's throat tight. Your dad told me about your mom. She sounded like an amazing person. I don't remember her very much. Just little pieces. Sophie moved a tiny doll from the bedroom to the kitchen. Dad says that's okay, that she'd want me to be happy even if I don't remember. He's right. Do you have kids? No. Do you want them? Lena blinked at the directness of the question. I haven't really thought about it. You should think about it. Sophie looked up at her with those disconcerting gray eyes. Kids are pretty great. I can see that. They played with the dollhouse until Adrian called them for dinner. The meal was surprisingly normal. Pasta that the housekeeper Maria had made, salad, bread. Sophie chattered about school and her friends and a science project about volcanoes. Adrian watched his daughter with obvious affection, occasionally glancing at Lena like he was checking to make sure she was real. After dinner, Sophie insisted on showing Lena her collection of architecture books, a shelf full of volumes about famous buildings and architects that clearly got regular use based on the worn spines. This one's my favorite, Sophie said, pulling out a book about Frank Lloyd Wright. Dad took me to see Fallingwater last year. It was so cool. I've always wanted to go there, Lena admitted. You should come with us next time. Dad says we're going back in the summer. Lena glanced at Adrian, who was leaning in the doorway watching them. Maybe, she said carefully. When Sophie finally went to bed, after extracting promises from Lena to visit again, Adrian walked Lena back to the living room. The space was beautiful in that careful, expensive way that spoke of professional decorators, but there were touches of life everywhere. Sophie's drawings on the fridge, books stacked on the coffee table, a blanket draped over the couch that looked well-loved. She likes you, Adrian said. She's wonderful. She doesn't usually warm up to people this quickly. He poured 2 glasses of wine and handed one to Lena. Her therapist says it's a defense mechanism from losing her mother so young. That makes sense. But with you, it was like she'd known you forever. Adrian sat on the couch, and after a moment's hesitation, Lena sat beside him. I think she's been lonely. I work too much. I'm not very good at the single parent thing. You built her a dollhouse with working lights. I think you're doing fine. Buildings I can handle. Feelings are harder. Lena understood that more than he knew. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, sipping wine and watching the city lights sparkle through the windows. I'm scared, Lena admitted finally. Of what? This. Us. Whatever we're becoming. She set down her wine glass. I'm scared of getting hurt again. I'm scared of losing the project if this goes wrong. I'm scared that I'm not enough for someone like you. Someone like me? Rich, successful, out of my league. Adrian set down his own glass and turned to face her. Lena, you're the most extraordinary person I've met in years. You're talented and passionate, and you care about things so deeply, it radiates off you. Any man would be lucky to be with you. Marcus didn't think so. Marcus was an idiot. We've established this. Adrian's hand found hers. You're not too little of anything. If anything, I'm the one who's not enough. That's ridiculous. Is it? I'm emotionally unavailable. I work constantly. I haven't been in a relationship since my wife died because I didn't know how to let anyone in. His grip tightened. And then you grabbed my arm at that gala and looked at me like I was just a person, not a bank account. He stopped. Lena waited, her heart pounding. I started wanting things I thought I'd never want again. Adrian finished quietly. Like what? Like someone to have dinner with, someone to share the Hawthorne building with, someone who understands why details matter. He looked at her. Someone who makes me feel less alone. Lena's vision blurred. Adrian, I know we can't. I know all the reasons why. But sitting here with you, watching you with Sophie, I keep thinking, what if we could? What if it ruins everything? What if it doesn't? They were close now, close enough that Lena could see the flecks of darker gray in his eyes, could count his heartbeat and the pulse at his throat. This was the moment, the choice. Cross the line or step back to safety. I'm terrified, she whispered. So am I. If we do this, if we try, I need you to promise me something. Anything. Promise me you'll be honest. If it's not working, if you're having second thoughts, if you wake up one day and realize this was a mistake, promise you'll tell me. No disappearing, no pulling away, no making me guess what went wrong. Adrian's hand came up to cup her face. I promise. But Lena, I don't think I'm going to wake up and realize this was a mistake. You don't know that. No, he agreed. But I'm willing to find out. He leaned in slowly, giving her time to pull away. Lena didn't pull away. Their lips met in a kiss that was gentle and tentative and absolutely terrifying in its sweetness. Adrian's hand slid into her hair, and Lena's fingers clutched his shirt, and for a moment the world narrowed to just this, the taste of wine on his lips, the warmth of his palm against her cheek, the feeling of something breaking open in her chest. When they finally pulled apart, Adrian rested his forehead against hers. Still terrified? He asked. Completely. Good. Me too. They sat together on the couch, Lena's head on Adrian's shoulder, and talked until past midnight. About Sophie, about the Hawthorne building, about all the ways they could screw this up and all the reasons they wanted to try anyway. It wasn't perfect or smooth or anything like the romance novels Lena's mother used to read. It was messy and uncertain and real. Around 1 a.m., Lena's phone buzzed. Jess, where are you? You're not at the office and you're not home. I'm worried. Lena typed back, I'm okay. I'm with Adrian. The response came immediately. Finally. About damn time. Lena showed Adrian the text. He smiled. Your business partner approves. Apparently. What about you? Do you approve? Lena thought about Marcus's texts, about the restraining order, about all the ways her last relationship had imploded. She thought about the Hawthorne building and her career and all the professional risks she was taking by getting involved with a client. Then she thought about the way Adrian had looked at her in the penthouse, about Sophie's easy acceptance, about the feeling of finally being seen by someone who mattered. Yeah, she said. I think I do. Adrian drove her home around 2, despite her protests that she could take a cab. He walked her to her door, kissed her goodnight in a way that made her toes curl, and waited until she was safely inside before leaving. Lena leaned against her door, touching her lips and trying to process what had just happened. She'd kissed Adrian Cole. She was dating Adrian Cole. This was real. Her phone buzzed one more time. Adrian, sleep well. See you tomorrow. Lena smiled and typed back, tomorrow. But tomorrow came with complications neither of them had anticipated. Lena arrived at the Hawthorne building to find Sal looking grim. We've got a problem, he said, leading her to the second floor. Found it this morning when we started demo on the east wing. The problem was immediately obvious, a section of floor that had rotted through completely, revealing structural damage that went deeper than anyone had anticipated. How bad? Lena asked, her stomach sinking. Bad. We're talking full beam replacement, maybe some foundation work. This is going to cost. How much? Sal showed her the estimate. The number made Lena dizzy. We don't have that in the budget, she said weakly. I know, but we can't move forward without fixing it. It's not safe. Lena called Adrian immediately. He arrived within 30 minutes, took one look at the damage, and went very quiet. We need to call the board, he said finally. They're going to kill the project. They might? Adrian? I'll handle it. But the tightness around his eyes suggested he wasn't sure he could. The emergency board meeting was scheduled for that afternoon. Lena spent the morning preparing damage control arguments, but she knew how it looked. Another delay. Another budget overrun. Another reason to question whether residential conversion was worth the hassle. In the conference room, Richard's expression was thunderous. This is exactly what I was afraid of. These old buildings are money pits. The structural damage was hidden, Lena argued. There was no way to know. That's the problem with historic restoration. There's always something hidden. Richard looked at Adrian. I'm recommending we cut our losses, sell the building as is, and move on. No. Adrian's voice was firm. We're not giving up. The numbers don't support continuing. Then we find more money. Adrian, I said we find more money. Adrian stood, commanding the room's attention. This building is important, not just financially, but culturally, architecturally. If we walk away now, someone else will buy it and tear it down. Everything we've worked for, everything Lena has planned, it'll be gone. That's very noble, Catherine said carefully. But nobility doesn't pay for structural repairs. I'll pay for them. The room went silent. Lena stared at Adrian. You'll what? Richard asked. I'll cover the overrun personally. Put it on my tab, not the company's. The project continues. That's insane, Catherine said. We're talking about potentially millions. I don't care. Adrian looked directly at Lena. This building deserves to be saved, and Lena deserves the chance to save it. Lena's throat went tight. He was risking his own money. For her vision. For the Hawthorne building. For them. The board argued for another hour, but Adrian wouldn't budge. Finally, reluctantly, they agreed to let the project continue with Adrian personally guaranteeing the overrun costs. Outside the conference room afterward, Lena caught Adrian's arm. You didn't have to do that. Yes, I did. Adrian, that's millions of dollars of your own money. I know what it is. He covered her hand with his. And I'd do it again. Why? Because you were right. This building deserves to be saved. And because... He stopped, glancing around at the people passing in the hallway. Can we talk somewhere private? They took the elevator to the empty top floor of Cole Industries building. The view from up here was spectacular. All of Chicago spread out below them like a promise. I'm falling for you, Adrian said without preamble. I know it's fast and probably stupid and definitely complicated, but watching you fight for that building, seeing how much you care, Lena, I haven't felt this way in years. Lena's heart hammered. Adrian, you don't have to say it back. I just needed you to know. That's why I'm covering the costs. Not because I think you can't handle it, but because I believe in what you're building, and because I believe in you. The honesty in his voice broke something open in Lena's chest. She stepped closer, rising on her toes to kiss him. It was different from last night, more urgent, more certain, weighted with everything they'd been holding back. When they finally broke apart, Adrian was smiling. So, he said, are we doing this? I think we are. Even though it's complicated? Especially because it's complicated. Adrian laughed and pulled her close, and standing in the empty office with Chicago stretching out below them, Lena let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, this could work. But that night, alone in her apartment, doubt crept back in. Adrian had just spent millions of dollars to keep her project alive. How was that not a power imbalance? How could she be sure he wanted her and not just the project? And what happened when the Hawthorne building was finished and they didn't have work to bind them together anymore? Her phone buzzed. Adrian, stop overthinking. I can practically hear you spiraling from here. Despite everything, Lena smiled. How did you know? Because I'm doing the same thing, wondering if I made the right choice. If you're going to wake up tomorrow and realize I'm just a workaholic billionaire with emotional baggage. Are you? Probably, but I'm also someone who cares about you. That has to count for something. Lena stared at the message for a long time. Then she typed, "It counts for everything. Get some sleep. Tomorrow we fix the building. Together? Together." Lena fell asleep with her phone in her hand, dreams full of marble walls and Adrian's gray eyes, and the terrifying possibility that maybe, despite everything, she was exactly where she was meant to be. The structural repairs took 6 weeks instead of 4, which meant they limped into autumn behind schedule and over budget despite Adrian's financial intervention. Lena spent most of October covered in dust, arguing with contractors and obsessively checking every detail as the Hawthorne building slowly transformed from ruin into something extraordinary. She also spent it falling deeper for Adrian Cole, though neither of them talked about it much. There wasn't time. Between the project demands and Sophie's school schedule and the constant pressure from the board, their relationship existed in stolen moments: coffee before dawn site visits, late-night phone calls after Sophie went to bed, the occasional dinner when they could both escape their responsibilities. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. "You're doing it again," Jess observed one morning, finding Lena staring at her phone with a smile she couldn't quite suppress. "Doing what?" "That thing where you look at your phone like it just told you you won the lottery." "Adrian sent me a picture of Sophie's Halloween costume. She's going as Frank Lloyd Wright." Jess peered at the photo. Sophie in a tiny suit with a bow tie, holding a cardboard model of falling water. "That's adorable, and also incredibly nerdy." "She insisted. Apparently all her friends are being princesses, and she wanted to be different. Wonder where she gets that from." Jess sat on the edge of Lena's desk. "So things are good? With Adrian?" Lena hesitated. "Things were good. Better than good, actually. Adrian was patient and kind and made her laugh when she was stressed. He understood the pressure of the project because he felt it too. And he'd started keeping a toothbrush at her apartment, which felt significant even though neither of them had acknowledged what it meant. But there was also Marcus, who continued to find ways around the restraining order. New phone numbers, messages through mutual acquaintances, a bouquet of dead roses delivered to the office with a card that said, "Thinking of you." Each incident was documented, reported, ultimately ineffective. The police couldn't do anything unless he showed up in person, and he was too smart for that. "Things are good," Lena said finally. "I'm just waiting for the other shoe to drop." "What shoe?" "I don't know. That's what makes it anxiety-inducing. You can't live like that, waiting for bad things to happen." "Watch me," Jess sighed. "Have you talked to Adrian about this?" "About what?" "About the fact that you're expecting him to leave, that you're already planning for when it falls apart." "I'm not—" "Yes, you are. You've been doing it since day one." Jess's voice was gentle. "I get it. Marcus messed you up, but Adrian isn't Marcus." "I know that." "Do you?" "Because from where I'm sitting, you're still 1 foot out the door, still ready to run if things get hard." Lena wanted to argue, but Jess was right. She'd been holding back, keeping parts of herself protected, waiting for the moment when Adrian would realize she wasn't worth the complication. Her phone buzzed. "Adrian." "Dinner tonight? Sophie wants to show you her costume in person." Lena typed back, "I'll be there." "Lena, we should probably talk. About us. About what happens after the building opens." Her stomach dropped. This was it. The conversation she'd been dreading, the moment where reality crashed into their carefully constructed bubble. "Okay," she replied. "Tonight." She spent the rest of the day distracted, barely hearing Sal's updates about the marble installation, or Margaret's excitement over the restored crown molding in the lobby. All she could think about was Adrian's text. What happens after the building opens? Was he ending things? Getting ahead of the inevitable? Trying to let her down gently? By the time she arrived at his penthouse that evening, Lena had worked herself into a quiet panic. Sophie met her at the door in full Frank Lloyd Wright regalia, chattering about her school parade, but Lena could barely focus. Adrian watched her from across the room, his expression unreadable. After dinner, after Sophie had shown off her costume from every angle and gone to bed, Adrian poured 2 glasses of wine and led Lena to the living room. The city glittered outside the windows, indifferent to her spiraling thoughts. "You look terrified," Adrian observed. "I'm fine." Lena, okay, I'm terrified. You said we needed to talk about what happens after the building opens, and I've spent all day convinced you're breaking up with me. Adrian blinked. What? No, that's not. Why would you think that? Because that's what the talk means. We need to talk is never good news. I wasn't breaking up with you. Adrian set down his wine glass. I was going to ask if you'd thought about what comes next. For us. Whether this is just a project relationship or something more. Relief flooded through Lena so fast she felt dizzy. Oh. I thought. Never mind what I thought. She took a shaky breath. What do you want it to be? More, Adrian said without hesitation. I want more. I want you to keep that toothbrush at your place permanently. I want Sophie to stop asking when you're coming over again because you're already here. I want... He stopped, something vulnerable crossing his face. I want to stop being afraid that you're going to leave. I'm not leaving. You say that now. But you're still waiting for me to fail some test I don't know I'm taking. The accuracy of the observation stung. Lena looked away. I'm sorry, she said quietly. You're right. I keep waiting for you to turn into Marcus. To wake up and decide I'm not worth the trouble. You're worth everything. You don't know that. Yes, I do. Adrian moved closer. Lena, I know you're scared. I know trusting someone after what he did is terrifying, but I'm scared too. I haven't let anyone close since Elena died. Sophie is the only person I've cared about in 6 years. And then you showed up and grabbed my arm at that gala and... His voice broke slightly. He cleared his throat. And suddenly I'm feeling things again, he continued. Wanting things, hoping for things. That's terrifying when you've spent years carefully not hoping for anything. Lena's eyes stung. What do you want from me? I want you to stay, really stay, not with one foot out the door planning your exit. I want you to trust that I'm in this. What if I can't? What if I'm too broken to trust anyone completely? Then we figure it out together. Adrian took her hand. I'm not asking you to be perfect. I'm asking you to try. The simplicity of it made Lena's chest ache. Try, just try. Stop protecting herself from hurt that might never come. Okay, she whispered. Okay? I'll try. To trust you. To stay. She squeezed his hand. To stop expecting the worst. Adrian pulled her close, and Lena let herself lean into him, let herself believe that maybe this could work, that maybe she deserved good things, that maybe love didn't always end in betrayal. The building opens in 3 weeks, Adrian said against her hair. The board is planning a big event. Press, investors, the whole circus. I know. I've been trying not to think about it. Why? Because once it opens, the project is done. And I don't know what I am without it. Adrian pulled back to look at her. You're Lena Hart, talented designer, pain-in-the-ass perfectionist, the woman who saved the Hawthorne building. And after? When there's no more Hawthorne building to save, then you save the next building and the next one. Your career isn't ending, Lena. It's just beginning. What if nobody else hires me? They will. Your phone has been ringing off the hook for weeks. It was true. Ever since the Tribune had run a feature on the restoration, Lena's email had filled with inquiries. Other historic buildings, other preservation projects, other chances to prove herself. She'd been too overwhelmed to respond to most of them. I'm scared, she admitted. I know, but you're also brave. You wouldn't have fought this hard if you weren't. They sat together on the couch, planning the opening gala, and arguing about which projects Lena should pursue next, and slowly, carefully, building a future that extended beyond the Hawthorne building. It felt fragile and uncertain, but it also felt possible. Around midnight, Lena's phone buzzed. Unknown number. She almost didn't check it, but something made her look. Marcus. I'm outside. We need to talk. Lena's blood went cold. She showed Adrian the message, and his expression hardened. Call 911, he said, already moving toward the door. Adrian, don't... I'm not confronting him. I'm making sure he doesn't get into the building. But when Adrian checked with the night security guard, Marcus was already gone. The cameras showed him standing outside for less than 3 minutes before walking away. He just wanted Lena to know he could find her. that restraining orders and security guards and billionaire boyfriends couldn't keep her safe. That's it, Adrian said. You're staying here until he's dealt with.
Adrian, I'm serious. He knows where you live. He knows where you work. He's escalating. I can't just move in with you. Why not? Because that's crazy. We've been dating for 2 months. Sophie barely knows me. I can't just... Sophie adores you, I adore you, and I can't sleep knowing you're vulnerable.
Lena wanted to argue, to insist she could handle Marcus herself, to maintain some independence. But the truth was, she was terrified. Marcus was getting bolder, and she was tired of looking over her shoulder. Temporary, she said finally. Just until the restraining order situation resolves. Temporary, Adrian agreed, but the way he said it suggested he hoped it might become permanent. Lena moved in the next day with a suitcase and her laptop and a growing sense that her life was spinning out of her careful control. Sophie was thrilled, immediately commandeering Lena's help with homework and demanding they build a new addition to the dollhouse. Adrian watched them together with an expression that made Lena's heart hurt in the best way. The week before the Hawthorne opening was chaos. Final inspections, last-minute fixes, staging the model units for the press tour. Lena was running on coffee and determination, sleeping maybe 4 hours a night. Adrian wasn't much better. He had the opening to manage, plus his regular business, plus coordinating with the lawyers about Marcus, who'd violated the restraining order twice more since the night outside Adrian's building. We're going to get an extension on the order, the lawyer assured them. Potentially criminal charges if he violates again. He will violate again, Lena said flatly. He's not going to stop. She was right. 3 days before the opening, Marcus showed up at the Hawthorne building. Lena was in the lobby with Margaret, doing a final walkthrough of the restored marble wall, when the door opened. She looked up expecting Sal or one of the contractors and found Marcus instead. He looked terrible. Unshaven, wrinkled clothes, eyes red-rimmed and wild. For a second, Lena was too shocked to move. You can't be here, Margaret said sharply. I'm calling security. I just want to talk to her. Marcus's eyes locked on Lena. 5 minutes, that's all. No, Lena found her voice. You need to leave, now. I saw the article, saw you with him. You're billionaire. Marcus took a step closer. You think you're so much better now? You think you won? I think you need to leave before I call the police. You destroyed my life, my reputation, all because you couldn't handle me moving on. The audacity of it made Lena laugh, harsh and bitter. You destroyed your own life. I just stopped letting you destroy mine. I loved you. No, you didn't. You loved what I could give you. My money, my trust, my grandmother's house. The second I was used up, you moved on. Marcus's face twisted. That's not true. It's completely true. And you know what? I don't care anymore. You don't get to make me feel small. You don't get to make me doubt myself. I'm done letting you have that power. Lena, security is on their way, Margaret interrupted, phone in hand. You have 30 seconds to leave before they arrive. Marcus looked between them, and Lena saw the moment he realized he'd lost. Whatever power he'd held over her, the fear, the self-doubt, the shame, it was gone. She'd built something beautiful without him. She'd found someone who actually valued her. She'd survived. You're making a mistake, he said finally. The only mistake I made was staying with you as long as I did. Marcus left just as security arrived. Lena watched him go and felt something loosen in her chest. The last thread of connection to the man who'd almost destroyed her. He was just a sad, angry person who couldn't handle losing control. He wasn't worth her fear anymore. Adrian arrived 10 minutes later, having gotten the call from building security. He found Lena still standing in the lobby, staring at the door Marcus had exited through. Are you okay? Adrian asked.
Yeah. Lena turned to face him. I am. Actually, genuinely okay. She told him what had happened, what she'd said. Adrian listened with a fierce pride in his eyes that made Lena feel stronger than she had in months. I'm proud of you, he said when she finished. I should have done it months ago. You did it when you were ready. That's what matters.
The police filed additional charges. Marcus's lawyer called to negotiate, but Lena refused to back down. She wanted the maximum penalties, wanted him to face real consequences for once in his life. It felt good, like taking back power she'd given away. The night before the opening, Lena stood in the completed Hawthorne building lobby and tried to comprehend what they'd accomplished. The marble wall gleamed under carefully positioned lighting. The restored ceiling stretched overhead with its original coffered details intact. The brass fixtures, reproductions of the 1889 originals, caught and reflected light like jewelry. It was perfect. More than perfect. It was exactly what she'd imagined that first day standing outside with Adrian, when the building had been nothing but grime and potential. "You did it," Adrian's voice came from behind her. "We did it." "No." He moved to stand beside her. "This was your vision. I just funded it." "You did more than that. You believed in it when nobody else did." "I believed in you." They stood together in the quiet lobby, and Lena felt the weight of the last 9 months settle over her. The fear, the doubt, the late nights and early mornings and constant pressure. And underneath it all, the slow, terrifying process of learning to trust again. To believe she deserved good things, to stop waiting for the world to prove she wasn't enough. "What are you thinking?" Adrian asked. "That I almost gave up, multiple times, on the project, on us, on myself." "But you didn't." "No," Lena agreed. "I didn't." "Why not?" She thought about it. "Because my grandmother didn't raise me to give up. Because Jess would have killed me. Because," she looked at Adrian, "because you kept showing up, even when I pushed you away, even when I was terrified and difficult and convinced it would all fall apart." "You were never difficult." "I was absolutely difficult." Adrian smiled. "Okay, maybe a little difficult, but also brave and talented and worth every difficult moment." "You're just saying that because you like me." "I'm saying it because it's true." He turned to face her fully. "Lena, these last few months with you, building this, building us, it's been the first time since Elena died that I felt like myself. Like I'm living instead of just going through the motions." Lena's throat tightened. "Adrian, I love you." The words came out quiet but certain. "I know it's fast and maybe too soon, but I do. I love you." The admission hung between them, heavy with possibility. Lena's first instinct was to deflect, to make a joke, to protect herself from the vulnerability of reciprocating. Instead, she said, "I love you too, and it terrifies me." "Good. I'd be worried if you weren't terrified." "That doesn't make sense." "Sure it does. Love is terrifying. Opening yourself up to someone, trusting them not to hurt you, it's the scariest thing you can do." Adrian took her hand. "But it's also worth it." "How do you know?" "Because I did it once before, with Elena, and even though losing her nearly destroyed me, I wouldn't trade those years for anything." His grip tightened. "I know I could lose you too. Relationships end, people leave, life is unpredictable, but I'd rather have you for whatever time we get than spend the rest of my life playing it safe." Lena felt tears spill over. She'd been so focused on protecting herself from pain that she'd forgotten joy was worth the risk. That love, real love, the kind that showed up and stayed and fought for you, was worth being vulnerable for. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay? I'm in, completely in, no more 1 foot out the door." Adrian pulled her close, and Lena let herself be held. Let herself believe that this was real and lasting and hers to keep. The opening gala the next night was everything Lena had stressed about and more. Press everywhere, photographers documenting every detail, wealthy potential buyers touring the restored units while servers circulated with champagne. The board was there, Richard actually smiling for once. Margaret gave a speech about the importance of preservation. Adrian stood beside Lena through all of it, his hand occasionally finding the small of her back in a gesture of support. Jess was there too, stunning in a dress she'd bought specifically for the occasion. "Look at you," she said, hugging Lena tight. "Successful designer, dating a billionaire, living in a penthouse. Who even are you?" "I'm still me," Lena protested. "Yeah, but the upgraded version." The Tribune architecture critic approached, asking questions about Lena's process and vision. Then Architectural Digest. Then a developer from New York who wanted to discuss a brownstone project in Brooklyn. Lena's head spun with possibilities. "This is insane," she told Adrian when they finally had a moment alone. "This is your career taking off." "I don't know if I'm ready." "You're ready." He kissed her temple. "Trust me." Sophie arrived with the nanny around 7. dressed in a velvet dress and patent leather shoes. She immediately attached herself to Lena, chattering about her day and asking a million questions about the building. "Did you really make all this?" Sophie asked, eyes wide as she looked around the lobby. "I helped. A lot of people worked on it." "But it was your idea?" "Yeah, it was my idea." "It's beautiful." Sophie slipped her small hand into Lena's. "You should build more buildings. You're really good at it." The simple confidence in her voice made Lena's eyes sting. When had this happened? When had she become someone this little girl looked up to? Someone Adrian loved? Someone who built beautiful things and believed she deserved success? Around 8, Richard approached with Catherine and several board members. Lena braced for criticism, but Richard's expression was almost warm. "Exceptional work, Ms. Hart," he said. "I'll admit, I had my doubts, but this—" He gestured around the lobby. "This is extraordinary." "Thank you." "We've been discussing next steps. Cole Industries has several properties that could benefit from your expertise, if you're interested." Lena looked at Adrian, who was carefully neutral. This was her choice. "I'm interested," she said, "but I'd want to discuss terms. Fair compensation, creative control, timeline expectations." "Of course." Richard actually smiled. "I'd expect nothing less." "Adrian said you were a tough negotiator." "Did he?" "He's been singing your praises for months. Quite proudly, I might add." After Richard left, Lena turned to Adrian. "You've been singing my praises?" "You're praiseworthy." "That's not a word." "It should be." They were interrupted by more guests, more congratulations, more opportunities. By the time the gala ended around 11, Lena's feet hurt and her face ached from smiling. But as she stood in the empty lobby with Adrian and Sophie, the little girl half asleep against her father's shoulder, Lena felt something settle in her chest. Peace, maybe, or happiness, or just the quiet certainty that she was exactly where she was supposed to be. The weeks after the opening were a blur. 3 units sold in the first week at asking price. 2 more went under contract shortly after. The waiting list for remaining apartments grew daily. Lena's phone didn't stop ringing. Developers, preservation societies, architecture firms wanting to collaborate or hire her outright. She signed with Cole Industries for 2 more projects and started her own consulting firm with Jess as full partner. They moved into a real office with actual furniture and a receptionist. Lena hired 2 junior designers. Her mother called crying with pride. Her father sent flowers. Marcus's criminal trial was scheduled for January. His lawyer tried to negotiate a plea deal, but Lena refused. She wanted him to face every consequence. The restraining order was extended for 5 years. He lost his job. His new girlfriend left him. Lena felt no satisfaction in his downfall, but she didn't feel guilt either. He'd made his choices. Now he lived with them. She and Adrian fell into a rhythm. Lena officially moved into the penthouse after temporarily staying there for 2 months. Sophie helped her unpack, claiming 1 drawer in the bathroom for Lena's stuff and declaring her part of the family. They had dinner together most nights when Adrian wasn't traveling. On weekends, they explored Chicago's architecture, Sophie between them asking endless questions. It wasn't perfect. Adrian still worked too much. Lena still spiraled when stressed. They argued about stupid things like whose turn it was to pick up Sophie from school or whether the thermostat should be set to 68 or 70. But they also apologized, talked things through, chose each other even when it was hard. 6 months after the Hawthorne opening, on a Saturday morning in late spring, Lena woke to find Adrian's side of the bed empty. She found him on the balcony, coffee in hand, watching the sun rise over Lake Michigan. "Couldn't sleep?" she asked, sliding her arms around his waist from behind. "Just thinking." "About?" Adrian turned to face her. "About how different my life is now. A year ago I was going through the motions, working, taking care of Sophie, not really living. And now? Now I have you. Now I'm building things that matter again. Now I remember what it feels like to be happy." He tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "You changed everything, Lena." "You changed everything for me, too." They stood together on the balcony as the city woke up around them, and Lena thought about the woman she'd been a year ago. Broken, scared, convinced she was too damaged for anything good. She thought about grabbing a stranger's arm at a gala because she couldn't face her ex alone. About all the ways that impulsive, desperate choice had changed the trajectory of her entire life. "What are you thinking?" Adrian asked. "That I'm glad I grabbed your arm." "So am I." Even though I was a mess? You weren't a mess. You were brave.
I was terrified. Same thing sometimes. Adrian kissed her forehead. Come on. Sophie's making pancakes. We should supervise before she sets something on fire. Inside, Sophie was indeed in the kitchen, flour everywhere, batter dripping down the counter. She looked up when they entered, grinning proudly. I made breakfast, she announced. Well, I'm making it. It's not done yet. I can see that, Adrian said, surveying the damage.
Lena, you have to help. Dad doesn't let me do the flipping part.
That's because you burned yourself last time, Adrian pointed out. That was once. Lena laughed and moved to help Sophie, and as they worked together, making a mess, burning one pancake, laughing at Sophie's stories about her friends, she felt something click into place. This was family. Not perfect, not the fairy tale she'd imagined as a girl, but real and messy and hers. Later that afternoon, after they'd cleaned up the kitchen disaster and Sophie had gone to a friend's birthday party, Adrian asked Lena to come with him to the Hawthorne building. They hadn't been back since the opening, both too busy with new projects. The building looked different occupied. Curtains in windows, plants on balconies, signs of life throughout. The couple who'd bought the penthouse unit had moved in last week, and as Adrian and Lena stood outside looking up, they could see lights on in the top floor. Someone's living our dream, Lena said. We have our own dreams now. True. She leaned against him. Why did you want to come here? Because I wanted to remember where we started. Adrian pulled a small box from his pocket. And because I wanted to ask you something in the place where we built our foundation. Lena's heart stopped. The box was obviously a ring box. This was happening. This was actually happening. I know it's only been a year, Adrian said, opening the box to reveal a vintage emerald ring that took Lena's breath away. I know we're still figuring things out, but I also know I want to spend my life figuring things out with you. Adrian, you grabbed my arm at that gala because you needed someone, and I went along with it because I needed someone too. I just didn't know it yet. His voice roughened. You woke me up, Lena. You made me want to live again instead of just surviving, and I don't want to do this life without you. Lena was crying now, tears streaming down her face. That's the ring, she managed. From the beginning, from your outline. You remembered. I remember everything about that night. So? Adrian's hands were shaking slightly. Will you marry me? Lena thought about all the ways this could go wrong. The statistics on second marriages, the complications of blending families, the risk of opening herself up completely to someone who could hurt her more than Marcus ever had. Then she thought about Sophie's laugh, about Adrian's hand in hers during site visits, about building things together, not just buildings, but a life, about choosing love even when it was terrifying. Yes, she said. Yes, I'll marry you. Adrian slid the ring onto her finger, and it fit perfectly. Of course it did. He'd probably had it sized weeks ago, planning this moment, believing she'd say yes, even when she hadn't been sure herself. They kissed there on the sidewalk outside the Hawthorne building, and Lena tasted salt from both their tears. When they finally pulled apart, she was laughing. What's funny? Adrian asked. I just realized we're going to have to tell Jess. She's going to lose her mind. She's going to say she knew from the beginning. She did know from the beginning. They called Sophie first, who screamed so loud Adrian had to hold the phone away from his ear. Then Jess, who did indeed say she'd known all along. Then Adrian's sister, Lena's parents, Margaret, the team from the Hawthorne project. By evening, Lena's phone was flooded with congratulations. That night, after Sophie had gone to bed still chattering about being a flower girl, Lena and Adrian sat on the couch with wine and wedding magazines that Sophie had somehow already acquired. She's been planning this, Lena observed, flipping through pages covered in Sophie's notes. She asked me 3 months ago if I was going to marry you. I said, eventually. 3 months ago? I've known for a while. Adrian pulled Lena close. I was just waiting for the right moment. And the Hawthorne building was the right moment? It's where everything started. It felt right to come full circle. Lena thought about that, about the stranger she'd grabbed in desperation becoming the man she'd marry, about the building that had saved her career becoming the foundation of her future, about all the ways life surprised you when you stopped protecting yourself from it. I love you, she said. Even though you're a workaholic billionaire with emotional baggage,
And I love you, Adrian replied, even though you're a perfectionist who stress bakes at 2 a.m. and second guesses every decision. That's not romantic. It's honest. Fair point. They sat together planning a wedding that Sophie would probably end up designing, talking about the future like it was something to anticipate instead of fear. And Lena realized this was what happiness felt like. Not perfect, not without worry, but real and solid and worth fighting for. 6 months later, they got married in the Hawthorne Building's restored lobby. Sophie was the flower girl, wearing her Frank Lloyd Wright bow tie with her dress. Jess was the maid of honor and cried through the entire ceremony. Richard gave a speech about second chances. Margaret talked about preserving what matters. Lena wore her grandmother's pearls and carried flowers the color of the Hawthorne Building's restored marble. Adrian's vows made her cry, and her vows made him laugh, and when they kissed, Sophie cheered so loudly the photographer had to pause. At the reception, Lena's mother pulled her aside. I was worried about you after Marcus. Worried you'd given up on love. I almost did. But you didn't. No, Lena agreed. I didn't. Your grandmother would be proud of the designer you've become, of the woman you are. The mention of her grandmother made Lena's eyes sting. I wish she could have seen this. The building, the wedding, all of it. She can see it. Her mother squeezed her hand, and she knows you didn't give up, that you kept building even when it was hard. Later, dancing with Adrian while Sophie spun in circles with her friends, and the Hawthorne Building's restored chandeliers cast golden light over everything, Lena thought about the last year and a half, about fear and courage and the terrifying process of letting someone in, about buildings and second chances, and the way broken things could be made beautiful again with enough care. She'd learned that love wasn't about being perfect or having all the answers. It was about showing up even when you were scared, about trusting someone to see your worst parts and stay anyway, about building something together, whether that was a marriage or a building or just a life worth living. What are you thinking? Adrian murmured against her hair. That I'm glad I grabbed your arm. You've said that before. It's worth repeating. Adrian pulled back to look at her. Any regrets? Lena thought about it. About Marcus, and the money she'd lost, and the grandmother's house she'd never get back. About all the ways she'd been hurt and scared and convinced she wasn't enough. No, she said finally. No regrets. Everything that happened, the good and the bad, it led me here. To you, to this. That's very philosophical. I'm feeling philosophical. It's my wedding day. Fair enough. Adrian spun her in a slow circle. For what it's worth, I don't have any regrets either. Sophie crashed into them mid-spin, demanding they all dance together. They obliged, the three of them moving to the music, while around them, the Hawthorne Building stood solid and beautiful, proof that broken things could be restored, that vision and dedication could transform ruins into something extraordinary, that taking a chance on a stranger at a gala could change your entire life. Because that's what Lena had learned through all of this. That courage wasn't the absence of fear. It was being terrified and doing it anyway. It was grabbing someone's arm when you were desperate and hoping they'd hold on. It was believing you deserved good things even when life had taught you otherwise. It was choosing to build instead of hide. To love instead of protect. To trust that maybe, just maybe, you were strong enough to survive whatever came next. And standing there in the lobby of the building they'd restored together, surrounded by people who loved her, married to a man who saw her, truly saw her, Lena knew she was strong enough. She'd always been strong enough. She just needed to believe it.